I'm going to call the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting for September 8th, 2020 to order. And Mr. Donnell Howard is going to do the invocation for us. And thank you, Mr. Howard. Could we all please stand?
Father God, we thank you for this glorious day you've given unto us. But Father God, we have entered into your presence to be about your business. So Lord, I pray, Lord, that for our leaders, Father, I pray, Lord, that you'll be ready to deliver unto them the wisdom that they need in the time of their decision making. I pray that all the souls that are here tonight, I pray, Lord, that we would be supportive along the way, Lord, that we would exemplify that which you would have us to do, and that is to encourage one another, build each other up as we go about progressing in this county. Lord, we give you all the praise and glory and honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Could you remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Before we go to opening board comments, Mr. Cully, do you want to make the introduction?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you Tamika Smith as our new finance director. She comes from as the director of budget and finance from the Virginia Indigent Defense Commission, which is a state agency. And prior to that, she had 6+ years as deputy director of finance for the city of Colonial Heights, and is an accountant for the Prince George Electric Co-op. She holds a Bachelor in Science in Accounting from Virginia Commonwealth University and a Master's in Science of Accounting and a Master's of Business Administration from Strayer University. She earned a Virginia Government Finance Officer's Certificate from the Virginia Government Finance Officers Association. So we're very pleased to have her. Today was her first day. I want her to come back tomorrow, so please don't ask her any tough questions tonight. She's just been indoctrinated into our systems, and we are glad she's on board and think she's going to do a wonderful job for us. So if you'd like to say a word or two for the board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you guys today. So there's nothing that you can ask me that will run me away. I am so excited to be here with you guys, and I'm excited for the relationship that I can build and will build with you, each of you individually and collectively. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you and welcome aboard, and thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, I got a couple of questions about the budget.
That's the right answer. That is the exact right answer.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
And this meeting was going to be short. Remember, that's what he said. Opening board comments, Mr. Black.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I only have actually one tonight, so that's actually be much shorter than my last one. As we move forward with trying to spread the internet throughout the county, while I appreciate the Internet Committee and what they are doing, I do think that Mr. Sadler needs to play a huge role in that, an essential role in that, just because of the fact that if we're going to target a certain area, it would take all the decisions on our part out of it. If we're going to target certain areas, I think he would be the one just to do it mathematically, what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, rather than having to worry about whose district is taken care of and so forth. So that's just my 2 cents. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Underwood?
Only one comment, Mr. Chairman. Last Wednesday, I lost my telephone, so I haven't returned very many emails, but I'll try to get back to those when I get my phone. But hopefully I'll be back up and running in the next couple of days, so just bear with me.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mrs. Long?
I have one comment to make, and that is at our meeting a couple weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, I sort of went mama mode over some behavior I'd seen that I hadn't liked. And no sooner did I do that, we started the public hearing, that one of the first 3 or 4, there was somebody that stood up and even though all comments are to be addressed to the chairman, spoke out and pointed out one of the supervisors by name over and over again. Again, the regulations for public hearing are on the back table, and there's no reason in our wonderful Caroline County that we can't speak civilly to one another, and that includes us to you and you to us. We are trying our best. So let's keep working at getting better at following the golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Long. Mr. Thomas?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to make up for Mr. Black. Just a few things. I got an email and had a discussion with someone last week, and the email didn't apply any wrongdoing, but it was something that could have been misunderstood. You recall at our meeting in August, coincidentally, we were discussing the referendum, and we also made a presentation to the NAACP about their donation to the county. Someone thought that those two were coincidental in some nature, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the donation from DentaQuest to the NAACP and to the county had been scheduled for April, but because of COVID, they couldn't get their signatures done. So one had nothing to do with the other, and I just wanted to make sure that people were clear and they understood that. It could have been seen as something different, and I wanted to make sure folks know about that. The other thing is I need to make sure that all of our businesses, especially our home businesses, have business licenses, and it's only a $35 fee, I think, unless you do $150,000 worth of business. It's important to do that because the Economic Development Office has been looking at local businesses for some grant money that's available. So if you don't register your business, even though it's a home business, we can't possibly get to you. So it's really critical to do that, and I had some conversation with folks about that. So we need to make sure we do that. We also need to discuss the use of the Germanna building and the county's contribution to Germanna. One of the things that Mr. Sadler and I know that when we get the VDOT grant, the county will have to provide some sort of training, and our relationship with Germanna would be an excellent tool there. And I know Germanna is looking at that location seriously due to the amount of people who are using it. I know we tried to get the schools to use it, but we need to make that building a little more active. So just a note, I had a lot of comments about good things about the broadband committee, but I'm going to let those go since Mr. Black wants Mr. Sadler to do them all. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
He's not as good a negotiator as I am, though, just to let you know.
I won't even go there. I just want to tell all the board members that I have talked to the school board chair about actually setting up a school board, board of supervisor joint retreat somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I've had several suggestions from board members about we need to come up with an agenda, and we will have a moderator that will be from out of the area to facilitate. So as things progress, I'll try to send out agendas, topics to each board member. Hopefully I'll get some comments. But other than that, I'm going to conclude board comments and move on to amendments to the agenda. I have one, Mr. Thomas. We have a new agenda in front of us, but we inadvertently ended up with 8 and 9 as public hearings tonight, and they were first reads. So you'll see a revised agenda in front of you. So I'm just going to say that we're going to move those to new business this evening.
Okay. You'd mentioned, Mr. Chair, the retreat we're talking about having with the school board, and I know we've been discussing, and some of us have discussed it a little more informally, about the joint meeting with the school board.
Correct.
And maybe we should make that an agenda item so we can discuss it.
I think it is on here as an item. It's under informational calendar items.
Oh, that's new to the agenda then.
No, it was on there. It's in the back, but it's on there.
Okay.
We want, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, September 15th, all right.
We want to do that right now so that, I mean, if the schools are here, rather than have them wait, this is going to be a long meeting.
Right. I was gonna suggest the end of the month, we have our new finance director who started today, and I'd just like her to get some of the finance under her belt before we had that meeting, and I was looking at the week of the 28th. Just to give her a couple of weeks, just to run in head start, trying to help you out, Mrs. Smith, and not pile a lot of stuff on top of you in a week.
I don't know Mrs. Smith, but I have every confidence in her that she could be ready the 15th. And really, it's the school's finance people that are gonna give us some information, and Mr. Cully's got the CARES Act numbers. The 15th is really, I mean, that's next week.
Well, we
so-
should wait for Mr. Forehand to get here, because
Okay,
Well, I mean, have we gotten numbers from the, my only thing is, have we gotten numbers from the state as far as what the numbers will look like?
No,
no.
no, we don't have any
And-
state numbers yet, and we
Are
we
they
haven't
meeting right
closed the-
now? Are they meeting right now? They're in session, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
They are in
they're
session.
just starting down that path of what they're gonna do. They were working on a bunch of election changes and election law changes at first. So we don't have that yet, and
I mean, how-
I agree with the chair, it would be better at the end of the month. We will have gotten the fiscal year 20 closed and have an idea where we are and also what we've been collecting,
Yeah.
in
'cause
this new budget year, a little bit better than we will next week, much less,
Miss-
Mr.
give
Chair,
finance
can
a
we move it
chance.
to the 29th?
I just feel like that was kind of the reason that I said, I want the meeting with the schools, I do. But it would be, we've waited all this time to get the state numbers, and if it takes just 2 more weeks, I mean, if we put it on the calendar now, they know it's coming. So like, we're definitely saying, hey, it's gonna be this date, and we're not gonna change that date in any way, shape, or form. But I mean, if we put it on the calendar now, they know, hey, on the 29th, we're having that meeting, and we'll have the numbers ready to go.
We hope so, yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a
Mis-
suggestion? Since we only have
Underwood?
one meeting in October, can we schedule this for October meeting to give us ample time to make sure we have
You mean
everything that we need?
Are you suggesting the night of the October meeting?
No, not the night, but on
Oh.
a day in October to make sure we have those numbers and she's had an opportunity, Ms. Smith has had an opportunity to look at it, have conversation with you,
The 6th?
perhaps Mr. Sealy. Why can't we just have a meeting in October?
October 6th, the Tuesday?
I'm good with that. The 15th was tight for me anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's do this.
well,
Yeah.
do we have to spend that second set of CARES money by December 30th? This year?
yes. All the CARES money's gotta be spent by December 30th.
See, we're cutting it really close if we push it. That's why I was saying do it as soon as possible.
We're gonna talk about CARES tonight.
Yeah, I know, and we got the school's CARES numbers via email, right?
Yeah, they're all in your packet.
So,
Mr. Thomas, spending money I don't think is gonna be an issue. I think we have some priorities, particularly
I thought-
internet issues right off the bat, I could think, that could take every dime that's available. But I just think that we need to make sure that the schools have an opportunity to get their ducks in a row. We have an opportunity that we have everything lined up. If there's conversations that are needed, those conversations would have taken place. So we don't have to push. We need to make some final decisions on that date.
Right.
And we can't afford to have missing information.
And one of the things the schools was looking for is FY 18, FY 19, and FY 20 leftover funds.
Correct.
That's it's not just CARES, but it's all those leftover monies, that they wanna talk about as well.
Meeting for that.
Yeah, so do we have a motion to meet on the 6th of October?
I don't have an issue with that.
So moved.
I have a
No,
motion.
Not so you make it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I'll second. You said so moved.
No, well, yeah, but I need a second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for October 6th for
Motion and second.
joint school board of supervisor meeting on funding, on funds, and we'll get that agenda together. Any further discussion?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, in the EOC, will it be,
We can social distance better than the EOC.
it'll be in here? We will do it,
In
Mr.
here?
Cully's saying in here. Joint meetings will be tough in here on the stage.
No.
Yeah, we do.
Joint meeting will have to be in the EOC. We'll
EOC,
figure
that's
out a
what I
way,
thought.
But there'll be limited other spectator seating. We may have to simulcast it in here.
Okay. So it'll be in the EOC the 6th at 6 o'clock.
I think that's better.
Dr. Calvera, can you socialize that with your board? I understand, but at least socialize that with them, see where we're at, because it's far enough out, I'm hoping we can catch everybody. Thank you.
And Dr. Calveric, it's really gonna happen.
I have a motion, a second, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. October the 6th at 6 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I have one other comment, and I was just listening to Dr. Calveric. Do we need a backup date if in fact they can't make the 6th?
Would
Because
you
she's
want
gonna
to,
take it back to her board first.
do you want to
to-
pick that Thursday, the 6th or the 8th? Do it a Thursday evening?
Would that be better for you, Dr. Calveric, give you a couple dates?
How about a backup date of the 8th, which would be Thursday? Or we could do Wednesday or Thursday, depending on Thursday, the 8th. So the backup date for that meeting, and I guess we can do that by consensus, will be the 8th, EOC at 6 o'clock. And we'll add, Mr. Colley?
You do have another meeting in September. So I would offer them the 6th. If that doesn't work, if they would come back with some sort of date in that week time frame, when we
could
come
always
back to
revisit
our
it.
second meeting in September, we'll
Right.
definitely have to set it in stone then
Correct, that's,
for that. So I
Okay.
think they would, you would, so we have another shot at it, so we don't have to
Okay.
pick it tonight.
So I don't have to have an alternate,
Correct.
we're gonna set that as tentative and we'll revisit it on the second meeting in September. Amendments to the agenda, we never did finish that. We didn't vote on amendments to the agenda. That's all I was doing. No other amendments. I'll take a motion to accept the agenda with those two changes.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Reports and presentations. Who's ever here from, oh, I do see who's here from Dewberry, even in a mask.
Even in a mask. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you might remember, in 2018, Dewberry and Davis had prepared our sewer master plan and presented that to you all in early 2019. In that plan, it discussed the sewer capacity in the Ladysmith area. Due to the limited capacity at that point, we issued a task order to complete a preliminary engineering report on the Ladysmith service area to look at how we would convey sewer from Ladysmith and be able to get that to the wastewater treatment plant. With that, there's two pump stations involved, the Ladysmith South River pump station and the VDOT pump station. Both of those pump stations pump one into the other, and then it pumps into Carmel Church. So it also takes capacity up in the main sewer line. So Dan Villenhauer is here with Dewberry, who's going to present the draft PER to you. Each of you should have a copy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Good to be here with you. I have a presentation, isn't it, up there right now? Yeah, so we just completed the draft PER, and as Mr. Shebel had indicated, should have a copy of it. So I'm going to go through the summary of this, and feel free to interrupt me while I'm doing the presentation or afterwards. So just to start out with the purpose, after we completed the master plan, we identified some capacity limitations in Ladysmith service area. So the purpose of this is looking at ways to maximize sewer capacity and support development, and ideally doing it in a phased way. As mentioned before, we evaluated the South River and VDOT wastewater pump stations, which pump down to Carmel Church and get routed to the wastewater treatment plant with a gravity sewer interceptor along Route 207. And in this PER, we provided recommendations for improvements, phasing, and then provided preliminary costs, environmental review, and scheduling. And just for your purposes, one of the things we were told was important is how do you equate flow to a single-family home connection? So based on flow records in the county, it's about 260 gallons per day per one single-family home, or ERC, equivalent residential connection. So this here is a summary of your existing wastewater collection system. So again, talk about why evaluating the system. So we have limited sewer capacity in the Ladysmith area, VDOT pump station, and then we looked at the Route 207 interceptor and how we could get the flow to the plant. And you can see going from north to south and then back up Route 207, it's a linear system. So South River pumps into VDOT, VDOT pumps into Route 207, and that affects capacity in not only in the Ladysmith area, but also the Carmel Church area. So this is sort of a graphic showing that. So as you can see, everything in Ladysmith goes to VDOT pump station, that gets pumped to Route 207. Everything in Carmel Church goes through Route 207 along with Ladysmith and then flows to the wastewater treatment plant. And so we started with looking at the most downstream area, so the Route 207 gravity sewer. Based on the model and the existing flow data, if you were able to get the flow to that Route 207 gravity sewer, you had limiting capacity of about 641 homes remaining. But the trick though is you have to get that to that Route 207 gravity sewer system. So based on our evaluation, the South River pump station, which serves the northern part of Ladysmith service area, had little to no remaining, or has little to no remaining capacity. VDOT pump station does have a little bit of remaining capacity, 194 homes, but you know, if development was to occur north of in the South River service area, you wouldn't be able to use that capacity. And again, that's sort of showing the limiting factor here for the Route 207 gravity sewer interceptor is.
Before you leave, can
Yes,
you
sir.
go back? Okay, so what you're saying, the red remaining 641 homes capacity, that's just in the Belmont area?
Correct, yes.
So a development in Belmont wouldn't impact the Ladysmith part at all?
They're all interrelated because they all go into the same
Right.
interceptor. So if you had development in the Belmont area, you would take up some of that capacity. So that would then minimize the capacity available for Ladysmith. But they all tie together into one gravity
Let me,
interceptor then.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Black.
I got a question as well. Up there on the South River, so that includes, I would imagine, like the Ladysmith Village area and so forth. So if Ladysmith Village, which is one of our big subdivisions, and it's expands and the neighborhood expands out, I mean, I know they're almost at capacity right now, but there's actually 5 neighborhoods planned for that area. So are we saying that we couldn't build because they couldn't expand that subdivision because there's no capacity?
Correct, based on the analysis, there's very limited amount of capacity. I think maybe a little bit, but essentially you're out of capacity at South River.
So what capacity are we at the plant?
The plant, I don't think is your limiting factor. I don't have the flow data offhand, but your limiting factor is your ability to convey flow to the
So
plant.
you're just talking about flow, not capacity at the plant? Not to be because when you say capacity, 641 homes is all we have left, that's a 3 million gallon per day plant. When you tell me 641 homes, I'm like,
Yeah, that is
What does
limited
that
by your
mean?
collection system capacity.
So
Right.
years ago.
but when he says no capacity left, you've got to wonder what that means.
We're not at 75% of that capacity.
The wastewater treatment plant capacity is 1.5 million, and our daily production right now is 500,000. So there's 1 million gallons available
A
in the
day.
current facility.
So we're 33%.
But the trick is getting that sewer from the area that you're developing to the plant. So that's what limits your
So
capacity
it's
right now.
infrastructure problem, not plant problem.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep, yes.
Could you go back to slide number 3, one before that?
This one?
Yeah,
Turn your mic on, Reg.
just trying to look at.
Yeah, so it's a little bit
1,
faded,
2
so it's hard to,
4.
So.
I understand.
Make sure I have this right. The key is getting it to 207, correct? That's our ultimate goal, correct?
yeah, so what we started with,
South River and from
we looked
VDOT.
at, yeah, we looked at Route 207 and said how much available capacity is in that sewer line. and it's about 641 homes. But then there's certain other bottlenecks upstream of that that prevent you. Like, if you had 641 homes built in the Ladysmith area right now, you wouldn't be able to get it to Route 207 with the current infrastructure.
I can explain this electrical real fast.
So what you're really saying is we need more pipe
Correct.
to get to the plant.
We need another route to the
You
plant,
need
is what
collection
he's saying.
system upgrades to be able to get the flow to the plant. So we have plenty of plant capacity. It's the ability of the collection system infrastructure to be able to get it to the plant.
Do we need bigger pipes?
So that's what we're going to get into as far as what the solutions are.
Bigger or more?
So, so I'll get into the analysis as far as what we looked at and recommended improvements. So again, that's your Route 207 interceptor, but in order to be able to get that flow to there, you're going to have to make other improvements upstream. So this gets into the condition assessment evaluation of these individual pump stations. So if you recall, South River is in the northern part of the Ladysmith service area, and the VDOT pump station collects all the flow from the Ladysmith sewer area, pumps it through a pressure main down to the Carmel Church area, and then that goes to the plant. So both these pump stations are over 25 years old, suction lift stations. And what we did is we worked with public works staff to conduct drawdown tests to determine the actual pumping rates now. So you can see the original design for South River was 325 gallons per minute, but actually based on the condition of the pumps and how it's currently operating, it's actually pumping 180 gallons per minute, which is a significant reduction in capacity. For VDOT, it's closer, but it still only has a actual pumping capacity of 415 gallons per minute compared to 500. And so again, both of these are over 25 years old, aging, worn out pumps. Force main still has life, but again, it's not as smooth and new as it was 25 plus years ago. And so again, the big takeaway is your actual pump capacity is less than what your original design was due to age. So we looked at ways to increase capacity of the South River. Again, that was the pump station had limited to no capacity. So we wanted to make sure that it was done in a way that was in line with the ultimate master plan recommendations. So for that Ladysmith service area, based on the projected development over a 30-year period, you would have to upsize that pump station at an estimated pumping rate of 2,300 gallons per minute. I believe that's a little bit over 3 million gallons per day, peak flow. So what we propose to do in order to make it more cost effective is go for initial phase of upgrading the station, increasing the pumping rate from 180 gallons per minute to 500 gallons per minute, and then just designing it and constructing it to where it'd be easy to upgrade it in the future to phase 2 and phase 3 as development increased. So this would give you, as you can see, an additional amount of capacity. So you do that, and based on South River, that increases your capacity to 425 additional new homes.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Schiebel, my only concern with that is, and I know it goes through phases, but I mean, looking at what the planning department has been saying that they're getting for starts, and with Pendleton and Ladysmith Village, if they're going to start again, 425 doesn't seem like, 425 doesn't seem like it's a whole lot of increased capacity for that area, considering that's a high growth area.
Pendleton actually does not go to this through South River Pump Station. So Pendleton is its own pump station. It goes into a gravity line directly. So 425 is the Ladysmith area, which is still a low number. When you start looking at the numbers of what it takes to go to give you 425 homes up to the phase 2, I mean, there's a significant increase. So what this does is gives the boards an opportunity to possibly select something to give us more capacity short term and be able to prepare for that longer term.
I guess my question is this, because it seems like if we go, I mean, my concern is if we go to, you go to phase 2 and then we're already obsolete by the time, like as far as the phase 1, and then we're already obsolete because you have the high growth in Ladysmith Village area. I'm just being honest with you, like that's
physics of this, Jeff, is you have to look at that close. It's gallons per minute.
Yeah,
I
but,
understand what you're saying.
And Ladysmith, but Ladysmith, we're not just talking about the house, we're also talking about the businesses too, right? The shopping
And
centers and so forth. So
Correct.
like, just for example, like the Wawa, and then you have, I mean, not that Tractor Supply is gonna, but in new businesses and stuff, like, I mean, that doesn't seem like, I mean, a business, depending on what it is, I mean, a business can take up significantly more than a residential home.
They can. When Walmart was looking to come to Caroline, they had a portion of the increase for phase one to upgrade that pump station and upgrading the pumps in there. So that was planned as part of that, just to make sure we had enough capacity for Walmart and the surrounding stores that were coming with that.
So to me, I mean, why wouldn't we spend a little extra money and go into phase two right away if we were gonna upgrade?
We'll get that. This is giving you options. If you don't want to spend $6 million and you only want to spend $1 million, it gives you an option of kind of scaling down and trying to put in stuff without throwing it away.
I know, but it ain't
So-
cheap, but it's be cheaper than now.
Yeah.
Cheaper now than later.
We'll let Mr. Villenhauer continue his presentation.
I'm
He'll
sorry.
kind of get into those.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, before he goes, Joey, what's Wawa in terms of houses? Is that 10 or 15 houses?
No. They're probably only 10, 15,000 gallons a day, maybe.
So
if
it
you-
was 230, so it's 5 houses?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the kind of the thing we need to figure out.
It's the equivalent of capacity. But again, these are gallons per minute, not, so just to bring the focus in a little more, a whole house doesn't dump 230 gallons at one time.
No, I mean, that I understand, but we're talking about 425 new homes. I seriously doubt we'll get 425 new homes in the next few years, but we might get 4 or 5 businesses, and that's what I want to see, if that'll take up 300 homes. Businesses are going to be more of a key than homes.
Well,
So,
even still though, I mean, I think Mr. Whiteman, and talking to Mr. Whiteman, you can talk to him off too, but I mean, we've had some new developers coming into that late, you know, I mean, and so it's, once they go up, I mean, they'll go up, you know, in the neighborhood pretty quickly. So,
So your presentation is going to get into cost later on?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's let him get the cost, then we'll see what makes sense.
Yeah, and this phase one obviously wouldn't be intended to meet your needs for the long term. It's something, hey, this is something you can implement fairly quickly within the next year and a half. At least give you some additional capacity, and then you can plan for the, you know, the larger scale upgrade. And the thought with phase one is we would put it into where we would make it easily expandable to phase two and phase three. So you wouldn't necessarily be throwing your money away. It would be more of a phase upgrade, just to put in something quicker, get you some additional capacity, initially 425 homes or whatever the equivalent amount of businesses would be. And then you could then plan for and budget for that larger capacity a few years down the road.
So basically, your phase one, phase two, phase three then would be getting us to the long-term solution
Yes, sir.
based on ratios or something that you
Yeah,
look
but
at,
based on the
where
demand.
where we think we're going to be in the next 3, 5, 10
No,
years.
phase three would be 30-year.
30, okay.
Yeah, so that based on the master plan projections, we're talking about, you know, we're talking about, you know, a 30-year growth plan. So we just, it's just something to keep in mind as we design and construct these pump stations. We don't want them to be obsolete in, you know, in 5 years without having a good plan to upgrade them. So we just kept that in mind, so, yeah. So going downstream, so the VDOT pump station, the ultimate, there's some pretty simple improvements you can make to increase the pumping capacity by 50 gallons per minute. And the other thing I think one of you pointed out, these flow numbers, they're really what you need to focus on is your equivalent additional residential connections, because the flow numbers are different depending on whether it's peak flow or average daily flow. So that's why you're trying to equate it back to additional homes. So if these are peak rates, and then we're talking about gallons per day versus gallons per minute, million gallons per day, average peak flow. So that's just something to keep in mind. So again, you know, the VDOT pump station does have capacity, but if you upgrade it pretty easily to another 50 gallons per minute, you can get some additional capacity. The key here is ultimately, because everything currently flows in a linear way all the way out through Caramel Church. The ultimate master plan recommendation was eventually to decouple Ladysmith from Caramel Church and run a separate gravity line directly to the plant. So that would free up additional capacity for Caramel Church and then have the required capacity for Ladysmith as well. So what we tried to do here is we didn't want to sink money into this VDOT pump station if we were to then go down the road and take it offline in the future. So we try to make some common sense recommendations. So this is, and I'll get into the cost later, but this is a fairly low cost upgrade that we can do that will provide you with a little bit additional capacity. So really just the pump station summary, VDOT ultimately gets decommissioned, so we don't want to spend a lot of money here. South River, at minimum for phase one, should be upgraded to double its capacity, but ultimately, you're trying to plan for future phases and future development. And ultimately, because everything goes to Route 207 gravity sewer, even if you're upgrading South River and VDOT and still going through Route 207, what that does is just that limits your capacity that's available for your development in Caramel Church. So it's not a great solution. So the next thing that we looked at in the PER is looking at this gravity sewer that would bypass Caramel Church. So you can see the black lines to the bottom of the page. That's the existing Caramel Church system, and then the red line going through the center of your screen there. That's what was proposed to take the VDOT pump station offline and route it by gravity directly to the wastewater treatment plant. And again, what that would do is that would free up your capacity right at that point of connection. And like we talked about earlier, you have a lot of available capacity at the plant, and this would allow you to get that sewer to the plant. So again, you remember the schematic of your existing system. This solution would then, you'd essentially have two parallel paths to the wastewater treatment plant. It would also free up capacity to the Route 207 gravity sewer system. Again, you would still have to do upgrades at the South River to get that additional capacity, but your Route 207 gravity interceptor and your VDOT pump station will not be limiting factors. And we would propose to design and size and construct the gravity sewer, the new Polecat Creek interceptor, to meet your 30-year planning projection, so you wouldn't have to go back there and make upgrades in the near future. And again, it would also, if you took all that flow from Route 207, it would increase your available capacity for your Caramel Church area. So before, if you recall, we had about 640 homes of capacity currently in Route 207 gravity sewer. If you take the flow from Ladysmith and divert it through this new gravity sewer interceptor, not only does it increase Ladysmith capacity, it increases your Caramel Church capacity without doing anything in that area. So it almost doubles that available capacity. And then your initial capacity, again, this goes back to upgrading collection system pump stations, lines upstream of the Polecat Creek interceptor with South River Pump Station, Pendleton Pump Station, anything else depending where your development is. Your initial capacity would be, with the South River upgrade, would be an additional 740 homes, and that includes flow from Pendleton and South River. Ultimately, if you upgraded everything upstream of Polecat in the Ladysmith area, that gravity sewer interceptor would give you capacity for 8,700 homes, assuming that everything upstream of it was upgraded to meet the capacity. So that's your long-term solution to provide your capacity required in South River. But obviously, it's a more costly project. So, and again, South River here, until you go to phase 2, you're limited to 425 homes. And then Pendleton here, so essentially what we did is based on South River, phase 1 capacity. Again, we can certainly revisit it and upgrade it further, but then the rest of that capacity then would be left to Pendleton area. And that could be obviously moved around as development occurred, but that's just an option here. So this is sort of just the tabular format. Again, just adds capacity to Ladysmith service area. Ultimately, we'll add a capacity for a lot of new homes or equivalent businesses in the Ladysmith area. Frees up capacity in the Caramel Church area, and it essentially is your long-term solution. So this sort of just gives you a summary of the cost and schedule. So VDOT pump station upgrade, again, that was a small pump station. It's, fairly low cost, $15,000 to $20,000. And this is, the South River Phase 1, which would add an additional 425 homes, estimated to be just under $1 million. And then the Polecat Creek Interceptor, which obviously is your long-term solution, that is estimated at 17.4 million. So obviously a much bigger cost there. So that's sort of the phased approach to give you additional capacity, but really to provide you for your long-term collection system capacity, be able to make use of your capacity at the plant. It requires that larger investment. So what we're proposing, so if you look at the bar chart at the bottom, so the VDOT pump station and South River pump station design and construction, that's a much shorter term option. So we're proposing VDOT pump station upgrades. You don't need engineering for that. That can be done, directly with Public Works staff, procuring some parts and pieces from the pump vendor. The South River pump station would then have a design phase. After it was designed, documents would be put out to bid for contractors, and then contractors would construct it. And so we're estimating, if you start, I don't know, let's say this fall, you'd have those upgrades completed by February of 2022. But again, it's not super fast, but it's faster than the Polecat Creek Interceptor. So for that, by the time you get into the engineering, permitting, easement acquisition, you're talking about a two-year plus process just to get to the construction plans, and then it'll be another 1.5 years, 2 years before it gets constructed. So point in showing this to you is that it's going to take years by the time you permit it, design it, and construct it to get that Polecat Creek Interceptor up and running. So that's something that should be considered as well. And that's why we try to show a phased approach to sort of help get some additional capacity initially, but then plan for the long term.
What would the actual land acquisition or the easement acquisition and the permit phase cost?
So the soft cost engineering, permitting, easement acquisition, that would be probably 10% or less of that total cost. So the majority of that would be construction.
Well, I was just looking at, if you don't have 17, do you secure the path?
Yeah, you're not, so that 17 million, like I said, 90+% of that is in the construction phase. Yeah, so.
So we have, you're just guesstimating the easement cost will be 10% of that, right?
Not only just easement, it would be the permitting, the design, the easement acquisition. So essentially you'd have at the end of that period, so the engineering, permitting, easement acquisition, you'd have a set of plans to be able to put out the bid for a contractor to construct. You'd have your easements in hand, and you'd have your permits in hand. So essentially that would give you everything ready to say, all right, I'm ready to spend the big bucks on constructing it, and I can put it out the bid. So
maybe I wasn't clear with my question. 17.4 million is construction, permitting.
Construction, permitting, engineering.
Engineering.
Yes.
But it does not include acquisition of the easement.
No, easement acquisition is included in that cost as well.
Your estimate?
Yes, sir. So that is total project cost. So that's
Okay.
easement, everything
Okay.
associated with it, whether it's engineering or construction or easement acquisition.
So theoretically, what if we offered a connection for an easement, we wouldn't pay the easement cost? So you think 7.4 is the maximum cost?
That is, hopefully it's so at this level, it's an approximate cost. It shouldn't be more than that unless we find some, for instance, if we hit a bunch of rock that goes through there, that's some of the things that could come up.
Which is real possible there.
It's a possibility. Based on my experience, usually the rock is west of 95, and this would be all east of 95.
Right.
So hopefully, right at the fall line, which is essentially 95 Route 1, there's a shift in geology. So hopefully east of it, you wouldn't hit as much rock. There's actually a gravity sewer project that Hanover County did, which was a 30-inch gravity sewer pipe out in Totopotomoy Creek for about 2 miles, so this one's longer than that, that we also used to compare those costs, and that they came in fairly close to, so we try to calibrate the cost there. Obviously, construction climate, affects that as well, but I think it's a number that you can be pretty confident in.
All right, can you one more time, because we got VDOT, South River, and then the big one is Polecat. Can you go back to that original slide, which had all those things there, so we can see what we get with VDOT? And then Polecat.
So you're talking about, which slide are you talking about?
Further back. Because I think you showed additional, didn't you have one that showed additional connections? It's probably in the very beginning, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
All right, okay.
Yeah. This one. You want that with this one?
Well, that's where, okay, so.
Oh, no, yeah.
Yeah, you need to go forward, I guess. I'm lost now. All right, stop there. No, that's not it. All right, forward again.
On the,
All right, maybe that was it.
I
So-
think this one tells you, so
Yeah,
if you're, before you do the $17 million project,
right.
you're limited by South River, VDOT, and then the capacity of Route 207 Interceptor. So our recommendation is you could upgrade the VDOT pump station further. So we looked at this, wasn't in the presentation, but we looked at what would it take to maximize out. So the Route 207 Interceptor has an equivalent of an additional 641 homes of available capacity, if you can get it to that Route 207 Interceptor. So we looked at if you could upgrade the VDOT pump station to be able to maximize fully that capacity, so essentially you would use up the rest of the 641 home capacity, that would mean that you wouldn't have any additional capacity at Carmel Church. You could do upgrade to VDOT pump station, which was estimated about $1 million, but we didn't think that was a good use of funds, because then you would use up all your capacity in Carmel Church, and then in order to free up that capacity, then you'd have to take the VDOT pump station offline. So essentially you'd be putting $1 million in the VDOT pump station and then decommissioning it in 5-10 years when you needed more capacity. So what we did is, we're gonna do a cost-effective VDOT pump station upgrade, so essentially a $15,000 upgrade to increase capacity to a certain amount, and then we're recommending a cost-effective South River pump station upgrade to be able to pump it into VDOT, and that would give you sort of your short-term capacity, 425 new homes upstream. And that was essentially the $750,000 cost.
Plus
to do
the
that.
15 or whatever, so it's
Yeah, exactly. So let's say in round numbers, $800,000. And so what that would give you is an additional 425 home capacity upstream of South River.
Or if I didn't do those and did the Polecat Creek Interceptor,
You would still have to do that, the
I
South
still have
River
to do
upgrade.
I still have to do
Yes.
South River.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the 15,000 I'm spending for VDOT is just to get us past the hump. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
that's
so this
fine.
is essentially, so if you look at this
All right.
figure here,
Yeah,
you do your upgrade at South River, and then that gets it to VDOT. And then VDOT, in order to continue your capacity increase, you do the Polecat Creek Interceptor.
right.
And then you can continue making upgrades in Ladysmith service area, whether it's at the South River pump station, Pendleton, or the infrastructure in between. It depends on where your growth is. But those are much more, bite-sized chunks. They're not, the 207 Interceptor, that's your major capital project to provide your long-term capacity in Ladysmith. And then as development occurs in these certain areas, then they're more manageable projects.
Well, we've got a lot of development projected in the Belmont Carmel Church area.
Yes, sir.
So, all we do there takes some capacity away from Ladysmith. And all the houses we do
Yes,
in
sir.
Ladysmith take some capacity away from the businesses we got in Belmont. So that's a balancing act for us to figure out, or, do you go for the big thing sooner?
Yeah, and that's obviously the limitation right now, is because everything goes through that Route 207
Right,
interceptor. So you're really just, like you said, it is a balancing act. So,
okay.
and obviously, the South River Pump Station, we proposed what we tried to do is we tried to propose a cost-effective upgrade initially to get you some additional capacity, but obviously we could go back and revisit that to provide what the cost of the Phase 2 upgrade would be. But again, you wouldn't really be able to use that capacity until you did the Polecat Creek Interceptor. So,
I envision many, many work sessions to get, because 17 million for a whole section at this point in time.
Well, and there's a lot that goes to this, and this is kind of one big chunk that's out of context. Because the reality is, we have to figure out how we're gonna get water to some of these people. And the other thing is, we have to sit down and map our real development.
Yeah, because water's the other side of this equation for us, that we have, I mean, we could have all the capacity in the world, if you don't have the water to provide for that, it really doesn't,
Yeah.
really doesn't matter, which is, I wasn't even gonna go there tonight, but, I mean, that is the other half of this equation, is our ability to produce water there and provide. It's a whole other situation. Mr. Cully, you seem you have something to say?
We did budget, it would be finance, but we did budget in utilities budget $350,000 for the South River pump station, because we knew going into budget that we were pretty much at capacity there.
So that's half of it. Half of South River.
Yeah, 'cause the price came in more than what we had thought. Well, that, Joey had 500 in there, I cut it, but.
Okay, so, yeah, we need to, I mean,
Because this is a, if you increase here, what do you do? It's the downstream problem. If you increase the you increase the flow from one site, it all bottlenecks at Carmel Church. So you sooner or later have to solve that problem.
but this is more of a, well, no, it's really a planning total concept problem, because we need to talk to Gary Wilson to see what businesses he has. Need to talk to Mike Fincham to see what, planning things he's seeing. And then we can make an intelligent decision based on those metrics. It sounds like a great idea to spend $17 million to increase the flow. But you're increasing the flow for what? And we don't necessarily know what's there. We're not gonna get it back from houses, that's for sure.
And we also need to look at the water capability that we've got
Right.
there, because that is the other, as you all know, that's what we suffer from there, because that is a well system, and it comes with its own set of
Yeah.
issues as they,
I may not even have 290 gallons to flush.
right. And that's the other side of the equation, is what can we realistically produce water-wise?
Mr. Shebel, do you have an answer to that question, I guess?
Yeah, today we can produce right about 900,000 gallons a day. We've drilled a new well. We've already tested for quality and quantity. It produces 200 gallons per minute that we should be able to put into the system. We've got money in the budget. We're going to be drilling 2 more wells and hoping that each of those are at least 100
So how
gallons
many,
a
just out
minute.
of curious, how many more, like, homes would we have capacity for on our system?
Well, if you use the 260 that we're
Not
using.
minus, not the wastewater, but just water. I understand that, but based on, yeah, what he thinks. Yeah.
Well, out of the 3 wells, we're looking at 500,000 gallons a day is what we're hoping to be able to produce new water into the system. So if you look at 500,000 gallons a day, and just for planning purposes, we use 400 gallons per home, so that's 1,250 homes.
Okay.
So we use that for planning. We know that that number's lower than that based on actual usage.
My concern is the fact that we always try to put a Band-Aid on things, and my concern is that when we're going to expand Ladysmith Road, Carmel Church is obviously going to have some growth. I mean, it's one of our growth areas for businesses, and some of these businesses could require, especially if we're trying to acquire, like, or try to get like data centers and stuff, they could use a lot of water. And I mean, to me, I heard Nancy say, and it was true, interest rates are very low right now. And so, to me, it's an investment in the county, and then we wouldn't have to worry about it ever again, because if you put a Band-Aid on it now, you're gonna be facing it down the road, and the cost is only gonna go up. So, I mean, that's the issue that we're facing.
I think we need
I
a
can't hear
work
what he's saying. I
session.
can't hear what he's saying.
We're gonna need several, because this is not a single faceted problem, it's multifaceted with a lot of other things that actually play into this. So,
If you actually look at our connections over the last 8 years, we're only at 500 homes. So in the entire utility system, that includes Milford also, so we'd have to subtract that out. But so 500 homes really in the last 8 years. You know, what's going to happen in the next 8 years? We want to plan for the future. How much do we want to spend up front and do a big investment?
But there's more to it, because it wasn't that slide, but one of those slides shows, the high school area, this building, Brookwoods, we may tie those into the county system.
Right, which is a separate conveyance line.
Right, but that goes back to the capacity.
It goes back to the capacity at the wastewater plant,
Right.
correct?
Yeah,
Really?
it won't affect capacity of the collection system infrastructure.
Right.
No, we're talking the wastewater plant, and that was 10 years ago, or it was longer than that.
What's that?
The wastewater treatment plant expansion,
That was 7 years ago now.
7 years ago.
And then it's designed, so we went from a 500,000 gallon a day plant to 1.5 million, so we
Right.
gained an additional 1 million. We can easily go to an additional 1.5 million, so 3 million gallons a day. And the numbers 5 years ago, it was about $5 million to give us an additional 1.5 million. So, really cost effective to be able to go up because of all the planning and stuff that was done during the construction of the existing plant.
That was a really smart idea to do that then, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Forehand.
any other questions? I'm sure there'll be work sessions. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
I'm gonna.
Thank you.
And just for the record, Mr. Forehand has arrived, as he said, 1 hour late, which is impressive because trying to keep an hour late time can be difficult.
Now, when are we gonna make a decision about having more of a joint work session to figure this out? Because this is,
Probably after the first of the year. I guess we need to see what budget numbers happen to us and all those kinds of things.
well, he's got 350 in this year's budget. You don't wanna talk about it this year?
Well, it's 750,000 to do it.
Yeah,
It's up to everybody on the board. I just didn't know what everybody's druthers were. Do we want to start down that path, or do we want to?
I think we need a conversation with Mr. Wilson and Mr. Fincham and kind of figure out what's on the horizon.
And then, and also what monies we need
Right.
for the next budget cycle. So we know where we are now, but
Because we've got a couple of
big.
significant developments coming.
Right.
We don't necessarily want to count that money before we get it, but those could help pay for whatever expansions there are. And we need to put all those things out, and it's really a chess match and not
Yeah.
checkers, so.
Mr. Cully, any idea when you think we could actually put this all in one place and talk about it?
I would think we'd be able to do it in another month or so. I will tell you that both Mr. Fincham and Mr. Wilson were included in all the planning meetings with both the water master plan and this sewer master plan. So we have tried to look at and forecast development, both business development, things along Ladysmith Road. That's sort of been a driving force on this South River pump station. There's a lot of development through there. It would all go that direction. Of course, there's been tremendous growth in the Pendleton neighborhood, which is all going in the VDOT pump station as well. So I think we'd be prepared to talk about it anytime that, everybody would be willing to get together and roll up their sleeves and look at it. But it is a potential problem.
Do we want to look at sometime in October, towards the end of October, to look at? That's fine, I just knew the other financial things in front of us and just was trying to get them all looked at.
How about the 27th of October?
Yeah, they can get us a date, let them figure something out and we'll,
We'll propose something for the agenda at the next meeting.
okay. And after the break, I may have my Board of Zoning Appeals person, I forgot, that's the next, or Board of Equalization, I'm sorry, next on the agenda, and I forgot to make a phone call the other night. I'm not, is everybody else ready?
I have,
I've got to make a phone call, so.
but it's changed now. We could have one per category. Mr. Cully, I did have a question. There's also a phase in there that says there has to be a certain percentage of professionals in different,
I think that's always been a requirement to have certain,
so since we don't know who else is being nominated, you'll let us know if we have to change something?
if you would give us.
Or add someone? Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to nominate Keith Upshaw. He was our representative last time and is willing to do it again.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if, I think he's semi-retired now. I don't,
Second.
but he has the experience.
I have a motion and a second for Mr. Keith Upshaw for the Port Royal District. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to nominate Mary Pitts from Mattapanai. She has real estate expertise and is currently in real estate.
Correct. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Underwood?
I'd like to reappoint Mr. Ernest Rollins, who also has real estate experience.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Mr. Foran, did you have a nomination?
Not quite, not yet.
Okay, because after the break, I should have one.
I should have one after the break, too.
Okay. If I don't, then I got a bigger problem.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna recommend that we appoint, Mr. Whiteman to the George Washington Regional Commission Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. And he's not here, so
Yeah,
that's
he's
good.
in back corner.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second that Mr. Whiteman be on the Bicycle Trails Committee for for George Washington Regional Commission. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Did anybody
Thank you, Mr.
ask
Whiteman. I
him?
knew you, with the
Did
look on your
anybody
face, you
ask him?
volunteered.
They meet at 5 a.m.
He was the one recommended anyhow.
I know, he was recommended.
No, he was already recommended. In this case, it is.
Voluntold. Consent agenda. Any items anyone wishes to remove? I have one. I would just like to discuss, to highlight some. I'm going to pull consent agenda item number C. Hearing no others.
Mr. Chair,
I thought we already did D. Is this did I miss something in its resolutions we have to do again?
Mr. Finch, so you're going to pull D, so we'll do that right now.
If it's just a quick question he can do right now, that's fine. I'm happy.
You've already approved the applications. You have to adopt a resolution of support for the 3 projects you authorized.
Okay.
That's all this is, the resolution.
That's what I thought. We don't need to pull it. I just,
Okay,
I thought we did it, so.
so do I have,
Mr. Chair, motion to approve consent agenda, all except item C.
thank you, Mr. Underwood, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion to second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carried. My My particular issue, and I'll say issue loosely, is that for those that haven't noticed, we have had land, very large chunks of land being bought up by different organizations that make them non-taxable. And one of the issues that I guess I have with this is when we adopt this, it makes looking for those sorts of entities a higher priority. You know, we've lost another 500 acres down on Panola Road that's no longer, it's gone to DGIF through another third-party organization. The land at 605, there's 2,600 acres that was bought by another group that was, that's now nonprofit, that's non-taxable. And we're little by little losing those pieces of land, and we don't even get notified. I mean, that's the irony of this. But one of the things that this points out is that the Scenic River section actually includes organizations looking to do that. And I don't know how long we can continue to have land continuously taken off the roll. Even though it's in land use, it still pays taxes. So we go from land use to no taxes, which puts a more intensive burden on everybody that lives here. I just didn't know how many of us have read all of this, but I went through pretty closely and read this because I've been watching. And actually, you know, we're up to a sizable number of parcels that are non-taxable, starting with 77,000 acres that's AP Hill, that is slowly chewing into what we're doing. Just to be mindful, it's not that I mind being Scenic River, but we don't even get asked or told when a piece of property gets bought and put into this non-tax situation.
Mr. Seeley, it's my impression that this just affects the river shore, the Rappahannock River shore, both Spotsylvania and King George and Fredericksburg and Essex have already approved this. Most of the property, the town of Fort Royal has passed it. Most of the property in Caroline on the Rappahannock River, there's so much under easement now, there's no benefit for anybody buying it for tax-free. You can't do anything with it. It's already either under easement or bought. There's very little that's just openly there for development because it is a resource-sensitive area. So this, in my feeling, just supports what our comp plan is for the Rappahannock River area, that little strip between AP Hill, and it would not affect the rest of the county. So it would just be for the shoreline. So I would move that we go forward and approve this.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed. I think it's going to hurt us long term. I don't disagree with the Scenic River, but I do see the land being bought and we're not told, and there are pieces, large pieces, being bought yearly that we just come off the tax rolls. Could we get a map made, Mr. Fincham, to just show everybody what that is beginning to look like? Because we are drained by 5 rivers, and it's going to impact us. So I just think it would be fair for everybody to see sort of the same map and be aware of the same thing. So if you could all put that together, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you're recording the vote as 5-1. You're the
5
only
to, I voted nay, and I can do a roll call.
No, we just wanted to make
There were
sure
no
you
other nays. I believe I was the nay vote. That takes us, do we want to do the text amendment first readings? We could do those sort of, we could wait, we could take a break and be back at 7:30 because there's nothing that's going to be fast.
The text, I think we could go quicker with the text amendment.
Text amendments? I'm up for text. Well, they're informational. They're not, they got moved. They were not for public hearing. That's why I was looking at them.
So we're moving to 8.
We're moving to number 8, which is in the old agenda that was under public hearings. It is not a public hearing, it is first reading tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we actually have requests for 3 text amendments for you all to authorize for public hearing. The first 2 text amendments, TXT 10 and 11, are for amendments to the subdivision ordinance. These are technical amendments only. The Postal Service is now requiring central post office boxes in subdivisions. They don't do house deliveries anymore. So this amendment is simply to require the delineation and installation of these community mailboxes or post office boxes in subdivisions. The second amendment is authorization for us to require digital or electronic copies of subdivision files. That's very important for us when we go to assign street addresses in these new subdivisions. It saves time and money on our part by having the engineer provide that information that we can send to our consultant. That's what those 2 amendments are.
Mr. Fincham, what type of file? What, is it a scanned copy of a?
No, it's actually an electronic copy, a CAD file.
Okay, a CAD file.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does that go in to adjust any boundaries in our CAD system when they resurvey, since some of the surveys are so ancient?
We can use them. We actually have a data for what's called COGO files, where we've actually taken plat data, the meets and bounds, and identified correct boundaries for properties. We don't include that in our actual base file because the COGO files don't necessarily fit well with the old tax files, but we actually do have a data layer that we're developing with all that information.
Okay.
The last amendment is TXT 1220 is, again, a technical amendment to the zoning ordinance. We actually have conflicting language in our ordinance related to fencing around stormwater ponds, and we're requesting that we remove the county requirement for fencing around stormwater ponds. It's a liability issue there that's of concern, and the fact it conflicts with another provision that says you don't have to do it. So those are the 3 amendments we're requesting you to authorize public hearing on.
Any questions on Mr. Forehand?
The fence around the stormwater, some of them can be fairly deep. Some of them can be placed in a school or around a school.
An HOA could still require it, or a POA could require it. The school system could require it, say if it's a new school with a stormwater pond. That would be up to them versus the county imposing that standard on them. That's all we're saying.
I know that I live in a neighborhood that doesn't have fences around them. But yeah, they're not deep, so.
Right. We just don't want to be the one imposing that standard.
Any other questions?
Would the text amendment regarding the CAD file apply to family subdivisions?
No, sir. This is primarily the major subdivisions, the additions to Ladysmith Village,
Okay.
things like that. Yes,
But
sir.
like
Where we
somebody that
get a
wants
street
to-
file.
Somebody that wants to divide up 25 acres into,
2 or 3 lots, no. As long as there's no public improvements required,
Okay.
this would not affect them.
all right, thank you.
Other questions? So are we ready to go to public hearing? When would you schedule this for, Mr. Fincham?
Yes, sir.
When?
October. Your October.
Okay. Now we're at 17 after. I guess we will take a break because there's no such thing as a 10-minute break for us. So we will take a break until 7:30. We are going to restart the meeting, and we are now to the public comment section of the agenda. For anybody wishing to make comment for anything not on the agenda for public hearing this evening, you're limited to 3 minutes. Please try to stay within 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair, Assistant Chair, and other members of Caroline County Board of Supervisors. I am Jessie Rollins, your complete count census chairperson, and I'm coming to you tonight with a quick update. If my math is right, I figured that each 1/10 of a point we goes up, it represents about 31 people, or approximately $620,000. On August 12, we were at 68.0%, or about 20,893 people. And the number that I'm using is 3,725, which our census COVID funds are based on. As of tonight, September 8, we are at 69.3% of Caroline County counted, according to the census tracker at census.gov. That represents an increase of 399 people, or approximately $7,980,000. So Mr. Millsap is winding down, and so he brought to me today some swag. So I have some census thank you gifts to our Board of Supervisors that I would like to leave for you guys. Also would like to leave you with a challenge. Now, each of you have received an email from me that has given you some pictures that you can post. For instance, it's not too late to get your census done. And a few weeks ago when I sent that, you had the updated map of the state of Virginia and the county of Caroline that shows our highest numbers are 73.4%, which is in the southwestern part of the county, and our lowest of 62.8 is in the northern part of the county. And so my ending of the 2020 Census Challenge to my Board of Supervisors is to take that information and please share it on your Facebook pages, as well as any other emails you have in your, that you are connected to. Census will wrap up September 30, and so I personally would like to see us hit at least 70. We have done better than we did in 2010, and so the census is still going on. We still need people to self-respond, and so that's my challenge to the board is please take that information and put it out, and if you can't find it, let my supervisor know because he has it, and please put that out to saturate the different parts of the county, and let's see if we can get to 70%. So I close by saying thank you for the opportunity to be the chair, and again, I have some thank you bags for each of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rollins. You can leave those with Alan Parton.
Mr. Chair, I want to say one of the reasons we have gone up is because of the chair. She has worked so hard for us getting this out, and it's much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? This is the only chance at public comment for those that aren't familiar. So once I close public comment, there is no other opportunity. Yeah, it's different than a public hearing. This is public comment, anything not a public hearing. No, you're right. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Next are public hearings. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next public, or your public hearing, first public hearing tonight is RZ 04-2020. Ruther Glen Road 80 LLC, care of Thompson Development LLC, Carmel Church Station LLC, and Caroline 40 LLC, who are collectively the owners and applicants, are requesting a rezoning from planned mixed-use development with a density of 8.2 dwellings per acre and 3.16 million square feet of office, commercial, and industrial space to M1 industrial with no specified density on tax parcels 82-17A and 82-17B, which are designated as Land Bay G in the Carmel Church Station Development Plan. The property consists of 79 acres more or less, and the subject property is located on the west side of Ruther Glen Road, between Ruther Glen Road and Interstate 95, and north of the CSX railroad tracks in the Mattaponi voting district. The 2030 comprehensive plan designates this area as being located in a Carmel Church community planning area and designated as heavy industrial and office industrial. And the proposed use is for industrial uses. The purpose of the rezoning is to remove the property from the Carmel Church Station development planning area and to modify the 500,000 square foot limitation for industrial zoning on the subject property. Phasing plan proffers and the Carmel Church development regulations from RZ 08-2009 would also be removed with this rezoning if it's approved. In 2010, the Board of Supervisors approved RZ 08-2009, rezoned over 1,000 acres of land in the southwest portion of Caroline County to planned mixed-use development. The project, known as Carmel Church Station, included a mix of residential, business, and industrial development, which is included as attachment 1 in your packet. The majority of the acreage is located west of Interstate 95. However, there were 2 parcels on the east side of 95 off of Ruther Glen Road, which is Route 652. The parcels that are currently designated for industrial development under Carmel Church Station are the 79 acres that were shown in your packet. It's important to note, I think, these parcels are already designated for industrial use under the Carmel Church Station plan. So the rezoning to M1 as requested is still consistent with the proposed industrial use and designation of that 79 acres. It would allow an increase in the overall square footage for the industrial development of that property, but at the same time would remove it from the development standards of the Carmel Church Station regulations. The county currently has a 600,000 square foot industrial prospect that is looking at the property. That 600,000 square foot prospect was the basis of the expedited public hearing for tonight's rezoning application. The size and immediacy of the prospect exceeds the ability to locate that user on this property in a timely manner, given the amount of work that it would take to amend or to develop the Carmel Church Station regulations and architectural standards to try to get that prospect to locate on this site. Therefore, the applicant is requesting the rezoning of these 2 parcels to M1 from PMUD. The Board of Supervisors approved this expedited hearing at its August 11th meeting, and the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this matter at its August 27th meeting and forwarded this to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval. The Planning Commission did note a number of concerns in forwarding this recommendation to the board. It had concerns about a number or the lack of limitations on a number of uses that might otherwise be objectionable for the neighborhood. They also echoed the concerns of some of the abutting property owners about establishing a buffer between the proposed industrial uses and residential properties. You do have a set of proffers that were received after the Planning Commission packet, or after the packet was prepared for the board. We do have an executed copy of those proffers in our possession. And with that, I'll address any questions that the board may have.
Board members, any questions before we go to the public hearing? Mr. Thomas?
Yes, it's really for Mr. Emerson. May we increase the buffer before we receive the proffer, or after the public hearing, before we receive the proffers? It's not a substantial change, but it's a question. You understand? And take yourself
We
off of
can't
mute.
hear him, he must be on mute. I know he can hear us.
I think, I don't want to speak for Mr. Emerson. From our perspective, I think, number one, the conditions or proffers are voluntary, so the applicant would have to agree to make any changes.
Right. That I understand.
Changes can be technical in nature and could be more restrictive. So I think Mr. Emerson agrees, could argue that a greater buffer would be more restrictive related to the development on the property. Your changes can't be so significant that it effectively constitutes a changed application.
Right, and that's what I wanted to make sure, and I guess really, is the applicant or a representative of the applicant here? Oh,
Mr. Emerson, did that sound correct to you?
It does. I'm sorry, I was muted before and I couldn't really hear Mr. Thomas's question, but your answer is correct.
okay. May I just to be safe, may I ask if the applicant would consider increasing the buffer size?
You can come on down.
You can come down, or you can say yes from there, either way.
I think it's gonna be more than a yes, no answer.
I'm Rusty Foley, M.R. Foley Associates, representing the owner. I'm sure the owner would be agreeable to a reasonable buffer. I think 40 foot is in there now with plantings. May I ask you what you were looking for?
What's reasonable to you?
40 feet is reasonable to me.
If we were to ask for 80, would that be an issue?
I think that might create problems as far as using the remainder of the property.
Okay, why don't we say 60 is a good compromise?
I think 50 is a good compromise, and that
65?
is 50.
65?
No, I'm not authorized to
Okay.
do that.
50 for right now is what
If
you're
you can
willing
live
to
with
increase
that,
the buffer.
he'll agree to that, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yes,
All right, thank you, sir.
yes.
Any other questions, comments before I open the public hearing?
Is the buffer, it's just on two sides of the property,
Yes.
right?
Yes, the buffer, and Mr. Foley, you might as well come down because you're going to make the first presentation, I guess. But the buffer is just on the side, I guess the northwest side where the residences are that are on Patterson Lane.
Yes, sir.
And that's
we're adjacent to industrial property also.
Right.
In the northeastern quadrant.
And as the proffers say, the buffer on that side is not applicable.
Correct.
And I'm just talking about the 60 feet for where the residents are.
50.
Oh, right. Okay.
45.
78. All right, 50 is good. You want to stay there because he's going to do the public hearing. You
I'm
go
going
first.
to open the public hearing. You may as well stay down.
Okay.
I'm going to open the public hearing for RZ 04 2020 Rutherford Glen Road 80 LLC, co-owner Thompson Development LLC, Carmel Church Station LLC, Caroline 40 LLC, owner applicants. Anyone wishing to speak, 3 minutes, come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Nancy Albright. I live in the Mattaponi district, and my property is adjacent to this property in question. So right up front, let me say I'm not against growth as long as it's smart growth. And this may be a good project. I don't know. I don't know much about it yet. I'm just hoping that we can have some nicer businesses, some good aesthetics, having a positive impact on our community and our tax base. Basically, I'm just hoping that you will not forget the residential properties that surround this potential industrial location. While this property may soon be designated as M1 industrial, it is surrounded by residential property holding the homes of regular people like me. There are real concerns about what this might do to our property values. Should I wish to sell, I can't really see too many people interested in living with a truck stop in their front yard and a distribution warehouse in the backyard. So I'm hoping at the very least that you would definitely require more than adequate buffers, and I appreciate you all asking for that, to help shield the neighboring homes from the noise and the commotion of a busy distribution warehouse. But even more importantly, any increased truck traffic at all on Ruther Glen Road will have a major impact on the safety and everyday lives of so many people who use this road daily to reach Route 1 and I-95. I'm sure you're all aware of our almost 20-year struggle to find a solution to the traffic problems at the Carmel Church interchange. Let's not repeat this. I hope we can learn from this that we must have adequate roadway improvements before we bring an even larger influx of truck traffic to the same area, but now venturing even farther down Ruther Glen Road. I hope we've learned that just because VDOT's diagrams look good on paper, that it doesn't necessarily mean it will work in real life. I know trucks are a vital part of our economy and our livelihoods, and I respect their need and I respect them. But VDOT and our county leaders must make certain that our roads are up to the challenge in a timely manner up front in order to protect the safety of all of us sharing the road. Please, if this is approved, don't hang us out to dry by settling for minimal buffers, minimal road improvements. Make Caroline proud and do it right the first time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marie Kay, and I live at 24059 Ruther Glen Road. It's actually at the very end of Patterson Lane. I also am not opposed to progress. I only ask that it be handled properly and that we definitely look at the possibility of having greater buffers, not only along the residents of Patterson Lane, but if I'm not mistaken, there are some on Ruther Glen Road that kind of butt up against, at least where I think the access road is at the moment, that I've seen roped off where the rezoning sign was. I'm concerned definitely about the infrastructure. It's a 2-lane road right now. It's my understanding any distribution will be coming in and out onto Ruther Glen Road, and right now there's just no way we can handle it. It's gonna, unless we look at the possibility of putting traffic lights and definitely more lanes. We have enough trouble at the moment with tractor trailers turning into, come to Love's, going by my house. I've been almost run over several times. So I'm thinking, with it even being a narrower road further down Ruther Glen, please take this in consideration. The noise factor, adding the buffer vegetation around, and also we still have the situation with the trash and so forth. So hopefully the business, if it does come through, will a pride in being a part of Caroline County and offers the jobs that we've heard about, but I'm really concerned about the safety factor.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is George Spinner. I live in the Mattapanai district. You know, I heard Mr. Thomas and the other gentleman whose name I didn't catch tossing around all the numbers about 60 feet, 50 feet, 40 feet. I just thought maybe it might be easier for everybody if they knew that the width of this structure right here, this room, is 50 feet. Maybe that'll help somebody understand what 50 feet is.
Thank you, Mr. Spinner. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? The applicant will get a chance here in a minute. Anyone else wishing to speak? Hearing none, I'm going to... Okay, I thought he always spoke after, but go ahead.
No, last.
Okay. Come on down.
You can go last or first.
I always thought it was after.
He comes back and asks.
First shall be last.
You are on.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, I'm Rusty Foley. I own M.R. Foley Associates, real estate brokerage firm. I just want you to know that this is a project-driven request, and we're here to ask for your support in rezoning. It was M1 prior to the PMUD. Hindsight's 2020. This probably should have been left off of that PMUD. But anyway, I'm more than happy to talk about the 40-foot buffer. What I'm kidding. Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Chair.
This is time sensitive.
Now you can close the public hearing.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's why I was going to close it before, but I am now going to close the public
Don't go
hearing.
anywhere.
Questions from the board? Mrs. Long.
Yes, I have one. The buffer, the 40, 50, 50, we're at 50-foot buffer. That's only on two sides.
Well, I think
Are we going to do it all the way
I
around?
think the last lady that just spoke, I think there's a very small, actually two residents on either side of Ruther Glen Road. So I would assume the buffer would be incorporated in those two residential pieces and then along the northern portion of the residence. But like I say, the northeastern section is adjacent to industrial property as it sits now.
Okay. What about along 95?
Pardon?
Along 95, will there be a buffer there?
Whatever the code says, I don't think there is a required buffer in the I-1.
But it's also on 95. I just don't like going down 95 and going from beautiful timbers to looking at maybe not the prettiest scenery, and so it also is a sound buffer. So
Well, I know that there was.
we could do something to protect the scenic
I've seen a preliminary plan, and it barely fits what they're looking at.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's something that they could agree to. I don't know if Mr. Wilson, if you've seen plans that show that could a buffer
Of course,
be
we
there.
can discuss all this when we see the plans too, but that's just a thought. This is just for the rezoning. We have the plans.
You don't have a site plan with you.
No, sir, I do not.
For that.
The site plan approval process is done in Mr. Fincham's office and not at the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, sir, correct.
Understand? See, we'll never, and she was asking if we, the Board of Supervisors, would see your plan. And I told her no, because that goes through the planning department.
Right.
Which is why I was insistent upon the buffer being increased.
Mr. Finch,
Because I really need to protect neighbors to your side.
Understood.
Okay.
Mr. Fincham, can you tell me if there is a setback for construction?
There is no extra setback to an interstate. It would be the standard setback for the M1 zoning district.
Which is,
I believe it's gonna be 15 feet, but realistically, they've got an extremely wide right-of-way there, so you're not gonna be right on the edge of the interstate. It's gonna be set back off of that right-of-way.
so there will be, the right-of-way has those big trees in it, so they'll stay because that's a VDOT right-of-way.
Some of that, yes, ma'am. Not all of it, but some of it.
We just need to keep the county looking pretty.
Yeah.
Like people want to come here and live, so, thank you.
Mr. Finch?
Yes, sir.
This buffer, does it include an earth berm, or is it just planted trees and such?
It would just be a vegetated buffer. There's no requirement to put berms or anything like that in there. It would strictly be a vegetated buffer.
Okay.
Mr. Fincham, if I could, what about the traffic and the worthiness of the road at this time? It's pretty narrow.
What I can tell you is that VDOT will require a traffic impact analysis for any industrial use that goes in there, which will look at the road, will look at the intersections in proximity to the road or to this industry, and we'll look at the improvements basically along the frontage of this property. It might identify potential needs off-site, but it would not require or could not require any mitigation of those potential off-site issues. It basically would have to be on-site.
Yeah, 'cause the Ruther Glen Road is already pretty narrow. I'm sure it's not a standard width. I'd almost bet anything since I drive it every day. And there is already lots of traffic, and they make the right turn going to the pilot. But now they're going a little further. That could really have an impact.
Yes, sir. If you recall, if we can get the improvements along the frontage of this property with this project, there's also similar language across the street with the property on the east side of 652. So those projects would have to do their frontage improvements along 652 as well. And I believe they basically own all of that frontage from where McKesson is now, almost all the way down to the Chesterfield Lane. So you've got a significant portion of industrial property on the east side of 95 that will be required to make improvements along their frontage as well to accommodate any traffic increases. So collectively between the two, there should be additional improvements to Route 652 that would help with the narrowness of that road. But it's not going to come all at one time. It would occur with the development of those various parcels.
So what you're saying is the state doesn't build in advance. The state will build after there's a need.
Maybe.
Maybe.
No, the state in this case may ask for a right turn lane, and they may ask for a right turn lane on the property across the street, which would essentially make that road 4 lanes in that area.
And it could also be some widening in that along the frontage to increase the width of the travel lanes.
Right.
So we could see that. But back to Mr. Forehand's question, I think the Route 639 improvements basically say what is the answer to the question you just asked. Yes, when there gets to be a need, and in some cases beyond a need, then VDOT will respond with a bigger plan.
But are the landowners required to do any of this? I mean, as the are they required, they're gonna have to put in the right turn, left turn kind of lanes? Or is VDOT, I don't think VDOT's gonna do that for these
VDOT would
improvements.
only do it with a smart scale project. Okay, they're not gonna come in on their own. They would only make significant improvements with a smart scale project. So if there's a gap between going from 2-lane improvements along the frontage to a major upgrade of 652, goes back to the smart scale project to address those larger improvements to the corridor.
How much frontage are the owners of this property responsible for in terms of distance?
I believe it's about 700 feet, Mr. Seeley, of frontage.
So what are we talking total distance then? Mr. Underwood probably knows this.
Your typical decel lane is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 to 350 feet, okay? So that's about half of your frontage right there would be devoted to a required deceleration lane into the property. There may be some other improvements in addition or in conjunction with that left turn lane to take up the rest of that frontage. You probably, for a 600,000 square foot plus or minus warehouse and distribution facility, not looking at a need in and of itself for another lane of traffic, just based on the size of that facility. You're going to need an aggregate number of distribution facilities with whatever those numbers show to get up to the point where you need the road improvement above and beyond the deceleration lanes and some potential widening of the existing travel lanes.
Mr. Wilson looks like he's got something to add.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I would add one point. VDOT does have the Economic Development Access Program grant, and we can get potentially $500,000 unmatched to take care of whatever kind of road impacts there may be that would be identified in the TIA. So it's not necessarily on us. This is a very successful program. It's been around for a long time. We've utilized it before, and this would be just the kind of program that would work for us.
So if we get this, so if we were to get this project, we may, I mean, I don't know what $500,000 would do from 207 back to this facility. What's that distance?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I think it would address the decel lane and some of the improvements that would be required for that particular site.
Okay. Mr. Underwood? Yep.
Mr. Wilson, again, my concern is, when you said VDOT has this program, it has to address the comfort of the residents who live there. Like there is quite a bit of truck traffic. That right turn off of Ruther Glen is already bad enough. There's been a number of accidents there. I'm just concerned for the neighbors who are, I know Mr. and Mrs. Albright for years, and they're not ones to raise too many concerns. But I think we have to make sure that even though they're not neighbors who would give you a hard time, I think that should be left up to us to make sure that the neighbors are taken care of and that we don't bring something in that in any way harms their property value or their ability to enjoy their home. This has been awful quiet for a number of years, with the exception of brought the truck stop in and then now we're bringing this in. And finally, I just wondered from the applicant, have you discussed your plans with the neighbors at all?
I have not personally, no, sir.
Has anyone that you're representing
I've
discussed
spoken with Nancy last week. She was a major player in the sub-area planning commission way back when the PMUD, prior to the PMUD. I think the owner addressed every issue that subcommittee came up with, and incorporated it in the comprehensive plan. But no, the last thing the owner wants to do is to upset Nancy, her family, and the people along Patterson Avenue. That's not the purpose here. Or let me back up by saying too that this particular project would be located on the southern side of the property, as opposed to next door to Nancy and that row of homes.
I'm familiar with that row of homes.
Yes, sir.
I live 3 miles down the road, so I travel every day.
Yes, sir. You know it better than I.
Yes.
I'm not saying.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Black?
Mr. Fincham, I've just got like just a general question. How often is it that you do a rezoning without the known end user being known to the public or the homeowners? Because that's, I mean, to me,
we
that's
try
the
not-
that's the only thing that's very strange about this, is that the end user is, you know, I mean, we're about to do rezoning for a major project, and I get that, and we want business, but I don't even think, we've had very little information on what the end user is ourselves. So you're asking the Board of Supervisors, we're asking the Board of Supervisors to rezone something, which is, I think would be a positive for the county, but at the same time, the homeowners don't really have a chance to understand what is going in there, and they're like, well, just, I mean, that to me seems, I don't know, I mean, it just doesn't seem fair to the homeowners, I guess, and I'm not saying that I'm against the project at all. It's just a fairness factor. It doesn't seem like the jury here is balanced.
Understood. From a planning perspective, I don't like bringing projects to you without as much of the information nailed down as possible. A site plan, proffers, which we have tonight, development guidelines, architectural standards, whatever the case may be. From a planning perspective, I like as much of that information nailed down as possible, and when presenting that to the commission, planning commission, and Board of Supervisors. In this case, staff was presented with an economic development project of which very little is known except that it is a 600,000 square foot distribution center. That's what we, as the planning department, had to work with this application. And where we've gotten to this point through the process. But I understand your concern. Generally speaking, if it, you know, the difference was this came through as an economic development project with the fast track. This is all the information we have to work with.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
Now, Mr. Fincham, could I ask a quick question of him since he's there? When we rezoned Carmel Church Station 10 years or so ago, we didn't have any idea of what was going there. We just had a concept plan of what things they thought would be there. Not a given prospect.
Not a given prospect. We had some definition in terms of the number of dwelling units, the overall amount of square footage for office, retail, commercial, industrial. We had a phasing plan.
Right.
We had a development plan. We had the basic beginnings of the architectural and design standards for that project.
Right.
With a requirement, there was a detailed planning process that, design charrette.
Right.
That still needed to be done to come up with the designs for the entire project.
But we never knew what any prospects were that were gonna come.
Yes,
Yes, we did know, or yes, we
no,
didn't know?
yes, you are correct.
Okay.
We also had the rail station, which was
Right.
central to that project.
Now, if we don't do this rezoning, based on the current PMUD zonings, they could still put something there similar to this facility that's being proposed by economic development.
They could put a 500,000 square foot industrial facility there. It would necessitate the beginning that design charrette
Right.
that was required for the entire project, which is the one aspect that doesn't really make sense, but that's what would have to do.
So it's pretty much still the same, except now with the rezoning, the size can be a little larger. There's not necessarily a design charrette, and we pretty much pulled out the residential component that would be there.
There really wasn't a residential component on this piece. There's a piece further south that has a residential component. That's still there.
Okay. I just want to
But
make
this,
sure
this was always industrial.
Yeah, which, and I think the other thing I'd asked you before was, my thought, or at least my recollection of Carmel Church Station was the side that was, or the development part that was on this side of 95, there would be eventually a road from there over to the other side of 95, going a bridge across 95, but that's another parcel.
That is their other parcel south of the CSX tracks, down near Cardinal Baptist Church. There is a potential for the construction of a bridge over 95 that would connect the two sides.
Okay, and the one last thing I had before they ask some more questions is, we have an issue, and I think you and I without a doubt would agree, but Ruther Glen Road and the intersection of 207, right at the Exxon station,
Yes,
VDOT made that just a right-in, and it was supposed to be a right-in, right-out, which could alleviate some of the residential traffic. They could go out that way and then make a right turn. So as VDOT looks at this project, which they said they have to, we need to make sure that they look at correcting what was supposed to be done a few years ago. As Mrs. Albright said, it's been a 20-year odyssey, and we'd not like to make it any longer.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Other questions?
Any other board members? Comments, questions? Motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make the motion. Mr. Foley, we have kind of agreed on the 50-foot buffer, that you think you can convince Mr. Thompson that's a good idea?
Yes, sir.
At least 50, and Mr. Thompson may come back at some other time and say, I can do more, or I can do a berm. It's all voluntary on his part.
I'll leave that up to him.
Okay. But we do have the board does have a relationship with Mr. Thompson, and we feel confident that if we need more of a buffer, that he would comply. But you're right now admitting to 50 feet.
Right now, I'm speaking for him,
Okay.
50 feet, yes.
Now, there are many issues to this whole project. One is there's a VDOT study that still has to be done, which, will make a determination for a lot of things. We talked about traffic, so that's still there. The prospect that Mr. Wilson has been working for still has to agree to come to the site. I think there's a backup prospect too. But all of those, the critical thing is we need to protect what we have, and I think we're trying to do that with the buffer. Your in and out is Ruther Glen Road. You're not gonna come back on Patterson and drive right past their houses.
Right.
So I think we do that. So considering that and the conditions and further discussion with the applicant, I'm gonna move that we approve this particular rezoning? And you're, of course, gonna send the message to Mr. Thompson?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, when will the board know that your prospect that you have now has officially agreed to this site?
This is a competitive process still.
Mm-hmm.
What you've done this evening is given us a competitive potential to win this project. I would think we would learn this within the next month or so, but we're at the mercy of an independent business that's making their own decisions. So, it's ultimately up to them, but we think it's a faster timeline than not.
Okay. Thank you.
We are going to move on to public hearing for the ordinance instituting emergency procedures to ensure continuity of the government of County of Carolina response to the COVID-19 disaster. Mr. Pardon, since you're standing up, I take it's you.
Through the short straw, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Limitations on physical assembly due to the COVID-19 pandemic have caused the board to make changes to their ordinary procedures, particularly regarding conducting meetings and holding public hearings. And in response, the board has adopted a series of emergency ordinance instituting emergency procedures to ensure the continuity of government and address limitations imposed by the pandemic. As you will recall, the board adopted an emergency continuity of government ordinance for this purpose at its August 11th meeting, and this was done with the understanding that there would be a public hearing at tonight's meeting to adopt a so-called permanent ordinance, although it's not really permanent, that will put the conditions, allow the conditions to remain in place through the end of the current budget year or until such time as the governor declares an end to the state of emergency. So that ordinance is the subject of the public hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Pardon. Any comments, questions from the board before we open the public hearing? I'm going to open the public.
Well, one question, and Mr. Emerson is here. We will be able to conduct ordinary business like Fairfax County does, or will we be restricted to just emergency business?
That's a fine line, and there's a disagreement amongst county attorneys and other parties as to what sort of business you can conduct. Some people think that any business that is related to the continuance of the government can be conducted, and other people think it's more restrictive. But it seems to be a fairly liberal interpretation of what you can do.
Does that mean
Can't really give you much more guidance than that. There's nothing in the code that, and there's no cases or anything to really provide a lot of guidance.
Well, we're all six here tonight, and we've always had four, so we could have conducted any business. Is that not true, Mr. Emerson?
Yeah, you had a quorum.
We always had a quorum.
But
you've had a quorum, so
but my question is, if for instance there are three of us here and only three, and the other three are remote, we couldn't have done any public hearings for rezonings or new businesses or things, because he's saying that's not an emergency.
It's a judgment question. I mean, zoning is somewhat, I think anyway, is somewhat problematic because it can pretty much always wait. Now, maybe there would be some specific facts that would mean that some issue really could not wait, in which case then you could do it. I think you just have to wait and look at it on a factual basis as the matters arise, and as you know who would be present or who might not be present, or how many people might not be present.
So maybe, and I'm just trying to get the board's feeling, maybe this particular zoning that was a competitive bid type of thing would have been an emergency, and the regular rezoning would not have been. Is that what we think?
And I think that's what we actually weighed as we moved forward, even though we had a quorum.
I mean,
There
if
were
we have
things
to, yeah.
there were things we pushed off because of COVID and not being able to actually get comments from folks that would have been impacted. And I guess you have to look at the bigger picture. Are the folks that are going to be impacted by some of this willing or able to come out? And I think that's what we weighed, because we did push off several zoning situations because we weren't sure that that was going to really facilitate the general public if we did it without their input. I guess that's going to be the biggest factor to weigh, is what's the public sentiment, and what is the value to them by not being able to have their voice heard. So with that said, I think we did push some stuff off that I guess in the liberal interpretation we could have done, and we didn't. I'm ready to open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak? Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Last call. Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move the adoption of the ordinance instituting emergency procedures.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Proposed amendment to Chapter 37, Article 2, Court Costs, Section 37-6, Security Fees of the Code of Caroline County. Mr. Pardon again.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the purpose of this public hearing is to consider an amendment to the county code that would increase the amount of the courthouse security fee, as you said, assessed for criminal traffic cases in both the general district and circuit court. This was authorized by the 2020 session of the Virginia General Assembly, and the proposed increase is from the current $10 to $20. And revenues from the fee can be used for courthouse security personnel, or if requested by the sheriff and agreed to by the board, equipment and personal property that is used in conjunction with courthouse security. The last increase was from $5 to $10 in 2007.
Questions, comments from the board? I'm going to open the public hearing on the proposed amendment to Chapter 37. Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Last call. Anyone? Hearing none, public hearing is now closed.
Question?
Mr. Thomas?
I need a clarification on a criminal traffic case. That's not your regular speeding ticket? Isn't that a, like, more serious offense, like an accident or something like that? Ben? Definition of a criminal traffic case. Is that a speeding ticket?
That's criminal code, I think. I think it's all traffic offenses.
So a speeding ticket is different than failure to yield and causing an accident? Everybody that goes to court will now pay $20 instead of $10? Okay. Major Mosier is saying that's my understanding.
Is that your understanding, Mr. Emerson?
I think all traffic offenses are criminal offenses under the code.
I guess if you get a ticket, you're a criminal. You're criminal.
Well, it's a criminal offense. It's, I don't know how you define a criminal, but it's not a civil offense.
All right. Any other further questions, comments? Motion is in order.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the proposed ordinance increase to Chapter 37, Court, Article 2, Court Costs, Section 37.6, Security Fees of the Code of Virginia, as proposed.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Agenda item number 7.
Members of the board, this is the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the FY 2021 county budget for our second round of our CARES Act funding. We are in receipt of additional $2,680,638 from the Commonwealth of Virginia and a second round of the federal coronavirus aid and relief. And we put that into some broad categories, and we do have on the agenda for more detailed discussion and appropriation of that amount, but we would, have this public hearing if there's anybody from the public that has any additional ideas for the CARES funding or request.
Before you go, Mr. Colley, just a quick
Mr.
question.
Thomas?
This again is, I think, the question I asked earlier. This second round of COVID funds has to be spent or appropriated,
Spent.
actually spent by December 30th?
Right, and we've already done one. Verification was turned in due today back to the state on what we had spent through June 30th of the original CARES money with all the detail and verification we had to do. But no, you have to spend it by December 30, not appropriate it. But you have to appropriate it so we can spend it. So we are currently running out of time to be able to get that pulled off. But
We lost a lot of runway. All right, that was my question, because if we appropriate it to whoever, the fire and rescue, and they can't buy whatever it is, if they can't buy whatever it is, they're just out of luck.
they are. We're going to keep an eye on what we've been able to purchase, what's backordered, what we can do, and then try to rearrange that spending as we move into November to try to make sure we've gotten it all done or all allocated for. That's why we've included so much in public safety reimbursement, because that's something that we are doing. We know we'll be able to do the paperwork to show that as being spent.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions from board members? All right, I'm going to now open the public hearing on the proposed amendment to the fiscal year 2021 Caroline County budget, second round of CARES Act. Anyone wishing to speak can come down front. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Comments, questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I have one question under Public Works, that it was an item that was not approved, and that's the restroom trailer. And I'm thinking the bathrooms at our park are closed, correct? No. They're open? Okay.
Those are open. And we didn't expect any action now because we do have an agenda item further in under new business to discuss CARES 1 and 2.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Motion to I'd close the public hearing.
That would be all you need to do unless you were just going to appropriate. We've got the spreadsheets and discussion.
Okay, so all we needed was the public hearing at this point.
Right then, and then from there we'll do an appropriation after y'all's discussion later on the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Agenda item number 10, which is request for a COVID Essential Employees Festival, music festival.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next item is a request for the approval of a festival permit for a small music festival with approximately 100 attendees. It would be between the Timbers Restaurant and Wright's Chapel, United Methodist Church, off of Ladysmith Road. The proposed music festival is September 26th from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. The applicant has met all the requirements under the festival permit, which is Chapter 49 of the Code of Caroline County. Such permits, however, do require Board of Supervisors authorization to conduct those events.
Questions, comments from the board?
It's not a big one.
Yeah, no, go for it. I move that we approve the. Second.
I have a motion to approve for the request for the COVID Essential Worker Music Festival. Do I have a second?
Second.
I thought I heard that, wasn't sure. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Ms. Holmes is here. The lady who's, Ms. Holmes is here. She's the one who's running it. Would you like to say something, or? I think you stop with yes.
You're on the verge of a vote. Do you want to talk before or after?
Chairman, distinguished members of the board, first of all, the word festival has to apply because there's a music component. I don't want you to be frightened that we're going to have 20,000 people. With COVID, we think we might have 25. When our places of worship can only get 5 or 10, I don't know what we'll do. But we really wanted to bring a little bit more joy, some happiness, some fun, and just kind of ease the tension with what our first responders and the people that have been taking care of Caroline County through COVID-19. There will be certificates that will be given out, and we will just have an hour of music that's entitled jazz, but it's actually songs from Babes in Arms, which is a Broadway show. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Good luck on your festival. Agenda item number 11. Special exception to Rebecca and John Tucker to operate a commercial kennel. I take it this is just the formality of.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the one-year review that was specified in the special exception permit approved by the board. This is off of Frog Level Road. If you remember, it's the kennel that is actually fully enclosed within the dwelling unit itself. We have not received any complaints from any neighbors. Staff did conduct a site visit. I believe there was one inquiry that we received from a board member concerning the conditions of the SE, but I don't believe that was actually a complaint about the conditions of the SE itself. There is no action required by the board. This is informational only unless you have issues that you want to bring to my attention.
Hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. Fincham, thank you. Agenda item number 12. Proposed use of second round of CARES Act funding. Is this Mr. Culley? We probably can.
So we got to that pretty quick. All right, this is where we can discuss the spreadsheet that exists in your packet. And basically, if you look, CARES Act payments may be used to cover costs that are necessary expenditures incurred during the public health emergency with respect to coronavirus disease 2019. Were not accounted for in the budget most recently approved for March 27, 20, the date enactment of the CARES Act. for the state government and were incurred during the period that begins March 1st of 2020 and ends on December 30, 2020. So there have been multiple guidelines and clarifications and things that have been put forth over time through CARES 1 and CARES 2. And one of the things that wasn't real clear in original CARES 1 was whether you could use CARES money to reimburse for public safety salaries. And some localities were initially proposing that and then kind of backed away. Then we finally got some clarification guidance that yes, that was allowed. So we've proposed $1,127,068.56 for public safety salaries in CARES Act 2. We'd already adopted $490,000 for public safety salaries in CARES 1. What this does is leaves $1,617,068 in the general fund that we would have expended on those salaries, and this is allowed by CARES. That leaves that there for maybe related revenue shortfalls or other future expenditures to be determined by the board. I believe it's important to keep as much of the CARES Act revenue in the account as we can. Some counties are using 100% of their CARES money for public safety salaries, thereby freeing the general fund dollars for other Board of Supervisors priorities. Spotsylvania is just one of such counties in the region that's doing that. So they've just put all of their money in public safety, and then what that frees up in the general fund, then they've gone back and done other CARES expenditures or made appropriations to schools. We proposed $644,052 of CARES Act 2 for the schools, which total, with CARES Act 1 funds, totals $1,009,052. This equals about 18.82% of the funds that were allocated to the county. Don't forget, in the county administration part of CARES Act is where we do also fund money for the town of Bowling Green and the town of Port Royal. So they would get the exact same amounts allocated to them that they received in the first round. So prepared to talk to you about any of the line items that we have. Again, the largest things we're doing is putting those in public safety salaries to save that money for some future board use and or revenue shortfall.
I just want to remind everyone, that's one-time money, because once we lose the CARES money, it's not like we have that in perpetuity. It's kind of like capital money.
Can you repeat the 1 point something you put in public safety? Because that is not in our packet.
It's in there, you just got to add them all up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if you come down to fire and rescue salaries, you see
all right.
439,681 and 78,587. And then if you go over to sheriff, you'll see we originally had those numbers higher. When we got the schools request, we lowered those down. So you'll see salaries, public safety sheriff is proposed at $563,675. That was originally $958,000. Same with fire and rescue. That was originally $560,400 and was cut to $439.
So in the agenda item 7 that we did, that's where you're saying those two numbers add up. Sheriff's office 694, fire and rescue 748.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the 490 that we did in CARES 1 should add up to $1,617,068. And what that represents is money that we had appropriated either in FY20 budget, which is done, or in FY21 for public safety that the CARES Act allows you to say that's a eligible CARES expense. So that money won't be spent out of the general fund to fund all of those positions. It's there for future use.
Okay. Now I have another question. We got an email from schools last week, and their number was 1.2 million. Right?
We included everything that they had asked for.
1.252 less 365 appropriated before, so 887.
Yeah, 887.
Is that
yeah.
You got the same thing?
Yes, 887.
It's on the back of the,
I thought, didn't
I'm
we,
just trying
we
to match them
included
up.
that?
That's, yeah.
right.
Yeah, it was in
Now,
your
that,
packet.
that 87, that's the end of our sheet from our packet.
Correct.
But in the total, what was the school's number that you approved? Because you reduced a couple of things.
Yes, we reduced, a couple of things that they had, two of which were easy because they requested full-time employment at $80,000, gotta get on that sheet, salary for something. Oh, it's summarized in your packet. Yeah, there we go. We eliminated an $80,860 request for coordinator of virtual learning and innovation. We don't see how that fits the CARES Act definition that I gave you at the start. Eliminated request of a $39,649 for instructional technology assistant. Same thing, it's an employee. There's just no way to fund those. We reduced the request to eliminate annual student technology fee from $85,000 to $42,500, and reduced the request for modified device service contracts from $249 to $165,600. At the time we were working on that spreadsheet, Mr. Thomas, you had been involved in an email back and forth, and that was a number that sort of came up in an email between you and Dr. Calveric on the number of those that were needed. Since then, that's changed somewhat, but there again, I don't know which ones of those are exactly working with T-Mobile devices that don't work throughout the whole county. But you remember that it was early on when there was something about how many of those they needed, and you requested, and you did some math, and that's where we got that. I think we were around that 165 number.
Yeah, I kind of remember asking how many
They needed, and this, that, and the other. Correct. Right. And so since then, I think they've changed that number, so that's gone back up. So we proposed which is in this big spreadsheet. $640,052 in CARES money for CARES 2. So if you add the $365 that they've already gotten, that would be $1,009,052, which is short of their request of $1,002,000. So we're about $200,000 off. So, I mean, you certainly can get that $200,000 by taking it from public safety salaries, which we already did. As I showed you, we lowered those down to put more money into schools after we got their request.
Off, and you took $150,000 of salary stuff, or 130 some of salary, 120 of salary, whatever that number. We're pretty close.
Right.
Because we can't do
We're
salaries.
right there because we can't do salaries.
Not for
right.
Not
The only thing I think left now is just technology.
Right.
If you want to put more money into the technology modifier, or do you want to wait and see? Or remember, they have $700,000 plus dollars in CARES money on the other side that they got directly.
That they haven't used all of that.
Yeah, they want to save that because they don't have to spend that for 2 years.
Right, which is a good idea.
Correct.
Okay, so we believe we're, for the most part, satisfying their request for CARES funding.
Close, but not 100%.
Well, we're $80,000 off at the most. Of $1 million, we're $80,000 off. That's less than 1%.
Yeah, they wanted $1,252,000, and we're at combined $1,009,052. And we know part of the $1,002,000 they want was $80,000 for and $40,000. So 120 we couldn't do.
So they wanted.
So we're about 80 grand off.
Okay. Mr. Colley? One of the things that I wanted to make sure, and maybe Dr. Calvera could answer this by shaking her head or whatever, is eventually I would imagine there will be a plan to go back to school, whether it be in the second 9 weeks or at the semester. And my question is, when you do go back to the school setting, do you guys have the cleaning supplies that are necessary when you go back to school? Because that's something that will be critical for the virus, especially whenever that time frame is.
Good evening. Yes, we do believe that we will have adequate cleaning supplies. Also, the protection of the CARES funds that the school system received that Mr. Culley referenced, the $740,000, that will enable us to have access to immediate funding to address any future needs that may arise. We are extremely grateful for what is being proposed this evening and feel that adequately meets our needs and are appreciative of the conversation that's transpiring this evening. That was a great hurdle in our ability to even entertain a face-to-face return, and that we did not have funding at the time to acquire everything that was necessary to safely return to school. But with the influx of funds that you are entertaining this evening, we feel very comfortable in now having the option on the table for the second quarter if data indicates that's the safe way to conduct teaching and learning.
Okay, thank you.
And before you go, if the data shows that you won't be face-to-face second quarter, you're still in a position to just shift that money over because you've got till 2020?
2022.
We are
2022?
actually able to utilize that money through September 30, 2022. So we have $740,000 that was to extend from March 13th, 2020 through September 30, 2022.
But this
And-
million we give you now, you have to spend by December 30th this year.
Correct, and it really is somewhat encumbered in terms of the things that we've already had to purchase in order to outfit our facilities and our buses and all of the materials and supplies needed to ensure safety.
So
Thank
you're
you.
happy. You're happy.
We are very pleased with the conversation that is occurring this evening and are appreciative of your openness for the dialogue.
Get that on record.
Say you're happy.
We are happy with the conversation, Mr. Thomas.
All right,
Thank you.
I'll take a motion to
very
approve
much.
the expenditures for the
first.
COVID second round. I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have unanimous on school funds.
While you're appropriating, we didn't appropriate $11,091.02 in CARES 1 money. So if you would appropriate that to contingency, and we will make sure that if it's projects or whatever, we don't turn it back in. So
11,000.
$11,091.02. CARES 1, correct, that was the CARES 1 one.
Do I have a motion for the amount Mr. Cully is asking for contingent?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Black, was that you?
With me.
Oh, Mr. Forehand. I have a motion, second.
It's
Any further discussion?
$11,091.02. I mean,
All-
11,000, excuse me.
11,000.
$91.02.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Number 13.
That's
Do
still me.
we really, I mean, this is actually just reallocating. We've added some funds
just
to
wanted-
this for a building.
Right, we just want to make sure this was clear that you understood we were going to originally build a building, but our wise building official couldn't figure out how to make it work where we wanted. So we decided to replace the existing shed that's next to the general court that needs to go with a bigger shed and a fence around it and a loading area from the street, kind of enclose it all. If you look at it today, it just doesn't look nice right next to the courthouse, so we will make this as attractive as we possibly can, but it's the only place we really have any land to be able to pull this off. And so it's still CARES money, and we're just gonna reallocate some of it because it's a little bit more expensive because of the fencing and some of the things to do, but I think pretty straightforward.
Motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the proposed change to the project for the first round of CARES Act for Sheriff's Storage Office Facility.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Just want it to be pretty.
As best we can, trust me, because that's what I said, it's next to the courthouse.
Right, exactly.
What was our
We don't have to do it half
fund
by.
amount there, Mr. Cully?
It's
Flip the
40,000,
page, $40-some thousand with the,
up from 20 if they were gonna add on.
Thank you. I didn't have.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Agenda item 14.
The registrar couldn't be here tonight because it was kind of late on the agenda, which are actually earlier than we thought we would be. She has requested, and information is in your packet, to increase a part-time position to a full-time. I will add, there have been 3 part-time positions added with her COVID funds to help get through, I guess, the election this time. And so as you'll see, I didn't recommend that if you need more help, I would put more part-time there to try to figure out there's a lot of rules changing, a lot of things changing, but when you're adding a full-time person, you're not, just because they say they're not gonna take insurance, but you're adding VRS to start with, and then down the road, then you could be adding family plan insurance. So it could be way more expensive than what you think, and you may get more work done with just some part-time hours and some additional part-time people around the election time, not year-round. So that was sort of my objection to just continuing to add full-time people down there when their workload varies during the year a lot.
Mr. Keller, didn't we roll a part-time into a full-time about 2 years
Yeah, we
ago?
did, right. So we went up one already and then sort of increased that salary based on job description as well. So there's been some changes down there. So it's not that I'm opposed or not trying to help, but I think right now in this unknown time, part-time is still the way to try to handle that until we can finally get a handle on what things are going to look like. And we have a really busy election season on a presidential year, but it's not that busy in the off 3 years and then leads up to the next presidential. And you do have some primaries. I'm not discounting all that, but I think this fall will be as busy as it's going to be until fall 4 years from now.
So you're recommending use part-time people rather than a full-time person, but we could work the same hours.
Right.
Just as part-time people, so we don't get into VRS
Right.
and all
Yes,
the other
all the other things that
compensations.
go into,
And
yeah.
then that way, if we need to cut, then.
Right, when you don't need, if this time of year you need to work somebody on 40,
Right.
45 hours a week, you know, for
Get
3 or
to-
4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks to get 60 days to the election, work them, but you may not need to do that in February and March and April or whatever, especially on a year when there's not much primaries or there are small primaries.
But we can't work a part-time person more than.
You can, yeah, you have to pay them overtime.
But it's still much cheaper than having to pay VRS.
I didn't think you.
Yeah, VRS, you're starting about 9%.
30 hours or something.
Yeah, I thought, I didn't.
You have to
think
offer insurance at 30 hours.
Right.
Right, I think there's some more benefits.
Right.
That's not just for, if you work on 30 hours for 3 weeks.
No, that's an average, right, and it's a longer average than just.
Over what period of time are we talking about?
That I'd have to look up.
All right, what?
But I don't, what I'm saying, I'm not suggesting she would need to work that. She's got 3 additional part-time people that are working now. This lady's hours needed to go up 10 for, you know, this week or that week, or you've got to stay more than, you know, you work 32 this week or 35 right up near the election. I don't know that that's going to fall through as you move down away from the election. And it is an average. It's not that it's if you hit 30, you get health insurance. You've got to be averaging that over a period of time.
What if the registrar, and I've got two quick questions. What if the registrar says this particular part-time person is so knowledgeable that hiring a second part-time person is gonna detract because they've got to train that person?
Well, they've hired 3 in there already they're working on, so I can't answer that, but there again, I still think you could work this person up to 40 hours a week between now and the election. It wouldn't be the end of the world. And then you would have to see whether you needed that 40 hours moving forward into the spring and after.
All right, so we could work one of the part-time people 40 hours, add insurance.
No.
If
40,
you had to.
40 hours, but average it down to 30 over whatever time
On the
frame
insurance
you're saying.
time frame is.
That's
Because it's
what
not
he's saying.
instant. It's not if you just happen.
Right, I understand that.
Now,
Yeah, I think we need to know the time frame.
Yeah, we need to know the time frame,
whether
but the other question is, do we turn county employees, because the registrar is a special kind of state hybrid.
Correct.
Do we turn county employees part-time and make their job full-time without advertising that new full-time job?
Not the internal.
We most recently did it with the purchasing person, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
except that was vacant, so it hasn't really.
Okay.
They were gone is the reason I asked for that.
We do internal only recruitment sometimes in that case.
But you don't take a person now that's working for the county part-time and say, you know, Floyd's doing whatever in the county. He's an assistant treasurer or whatever.
Right.
And now we want to make him full-time. We don't just make me automatically full-time, because that
comes up in the budget.
No, it's not a budget
Right.
issue. It's a
He's talking
it's a
about-
procurement issue, really.
Advertisement
You
of
have to
position.
advertise a new position.
I can't recall us doing that, what you describing. There could be internal only recruitment on that. but off the top of my head, I can't recall a recent circumstance where we would
Okay.
just.
Mr.
Seasonal
Cully,
we do.
Seasonal groundkeepers that are 10-month employees, we have moved in with, there was a regular groundskeeper and a 12-month move out, we would move them in. They're already working for us. We'd move them from the
I thought
seasonal
that's where you've
10-month
done
into the
this.
12-month. That has happened. I don't say it happens every time, but that has happened.
This is seasonal.
Yeah.
they went from seasonal to full-time.
Correct.
It went from 10 months to 12 months.
Yeah, so.
So they could go from part-time to full-time based on training, based on
Right.
knowledge.
Knowledge.
And Mr. Shebel believes it's 6 months. You gotta average over 30 hours for a 6-month period of time. And so we do have people in solid waste collection, work convenience sites, occasionally work over 30 hours, but it doesn't average over that, over 6. But you also have made the statement, if somebody does, we'll pay the insurance. But you're still not paying necessarily retirement, which is another almost 9% of their salary going into that we're paying on the retirement side.
So we're
And
saying
paid leave and sick leave, it's more cost involved.
If that averages over 6 months at that.
we'll pay their insurance.
Right.
That's what we're saying.
Y'all said that years ago when the development first, we brought that to you right after Obamacare was enacted.
That was for that person, yeah.
No, it was for everybody.
For everybody, okay.
Yeah, it was for everybody. It was a board policy.
I'm done.
With the
I'm done.
caveat that it can only work 30 hours over the full period.
Mr. Chair, so we're saying that voter registrar, we prefer that she hire additional full-time, part-time instead of full-time.
Or work this person a little more part-time hours right now and not make them full-time.
Okay, gotcha.
And if the person works more than 30 hours on average, we'll pay for their insurance.
Make that a motion, you guys.
There's a threshold. There's a
Yeah, that's
threshold.
policy. You don't even have to make that a
Yeah, it's not 30 the first day. I mean,
There's
the first
a
week.
threshold that they have to reach. That's in
Right,
there.
if they
It's
reach
on
that
paper
threshold,
somewhere.
right.
So-
Yeah, I mean, that's.
And that's board policy already set,
All
that
right,
y'all set
yeah.
years ago. If we had anybody that was eligible, we would pay it.
But we do want to, I mean, it's important and we need to make sure staff lets the registrar know that it is our desire that she has as many people as possible to handle the election.
Correct, hours. Correct. Come back if you need more hours.
Right. And I don't
But
think
that's not
there's
necessarily
anybody that would
full-time.
disagree with that.
Right, no.
Okay. Okay.
So I guess we can just pass over this with no motion. Consider amendments to Chapter 56 of the Code of Caroline County allowing rifle hunting. I will say that this was a long journey the last time we did this. And there are opinions along the road that are varying. Mr. Pardon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I don't really have a lot of information other than to say that if you do want to make changes, it appears there are two options. You can repeal the ordinance entirely and then state law would be in effect, and you have in your board packet what that would look like. Or you can obviously amend the current ordinance and probably confused you, but I pulled a sheet from the, what is it called now, the Virginia Wildlife?
DGIF, as we all know it, Department of Game and Inland Fisheries.
Their hunting and fishing digest, and where they list, I think it's 64 localities in addition to Caroline that have local ordinances, and then they give you a number for each one. And then there's, I believe it's 84 separate summaries of what those ordinances look like. And if you see something in there that would align with the changes that you might want to make, we can certainly get the full ordinance from that locality. But if you want to make a change, those appear to be your options.
Mr. Black?
No, I mean, I've talked to some people, and the last time we had discussed this, and even the rifle hunters, and some people called me today. They were, the people that had talked to me today were okay with the rifle hunting during deer season. They didn't want rifle hunting, because you can hunt with a rifle now outside of, like, for the environment to get you outside of deer season. But they had talked to, the people I talked to.
Not for deer.
What's that?
Not for deer.
Not for deer,
Yeah.
outside of deer. Outside of deer season.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You have to have a
Well,
special
only
permit to do
for,
Yeah, yeah.
groundhogs, coyotes,
Yeah,
and
right.
feral hogs.
Right, right, excellent, thank you, Mr. Park. But anyway, what I was, they had talked about wanting to be elevated, the people I had talked to. Now, there was someone that said they didn't need it and wanted to go state law, but I do think if we do rifles, I have no problem with it being elevated from a stand. So that would be
What's the difference between hunting and self-defense? I've got a coyote in my backyard.
Oh,
Really?
Oh, no, you do, really.
Oh, yeah, I'm serious.
I've got them. I
I
can't
mean, I'm
shoot them
serious.
in town.
Am I allowed to defend myself, or do I have to go get a hunting license?
You can shoot a coyote as a varmint without a hunting license.
Anytime you can bait it, you can do many things that you couldn't do with game because it is considered a nuisance animal.
I mean, now foxes are the same thing, because I think it's I'm not sure if it's
Can't
a fox
shoot
or a
fox.
coyote.
Can't bait shoot foxes.
What do I do, get a dog?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just curious, because there's several in the neighborhood, so I'm sure I'm not the only one. Self-defense is okay.
I wouldn't presume to answer that, Mr. Thomas. I
Mr. Emerson, do you want to answer Mr. Thomas's question?
Alan, he had a gun.
Just shoot him.
He had
and
a
be done
gun.
with it. So we're gonna do, so you're saying during deer season from elevated stand with a rifle, right?
You know, the last time we did this elevated, non-elevated, they talked about all the injuries people got from being in elevated stands, going up and down with a gun, and the number of injuries in the state.
I mean, Essex and Spotsylvania both went the rifle hunting route in recent years.
From elevated?
And
They,
that's-
just open.
I believe they both went elevated, if I remember correctly.
I think Spotsylvania is just regular.
Just regular.
Yeah, and Hanover is just regular.
Mr. Chair.
I mean, to me, 85 would be.
Mrs. Long?
Well, and stating the thing about people falling, getting out of tree stands, in the regulations, I guess these are the state ones here that Alan put in here, on number 60, you're not supposed to have, your gun loaded going up, not until you can't put your shell in until you get to the top. So if they're gonna fall out of a tree stand, they're gonna fall out of a tree stand. It's not gonna have anything to do with.
Oh, no, it was just injuries from falling out of tree stands. That's all it was. Oh, yeah, we have to do the whole,
I would say, let's just open it like the other counties.
We just can't develop an ordinance for first reading, obviously, until we have some idea of what you.
right, so we're gonna have to give staff some idea what we want for an ordinance and come back for a first reading and.
Well, if we repealed our ordinance,
That would be.
then we would follow the state.
State, correct,
So we would just have to have a public hearing to repeal our ordinance if that's what we wanted to do.
correct.
We don't wanna do that.
It's gonna, as we talked about last time, we have various types of hunting. You have, the problem with Caroline being so wet is dog hunting is a vital piece of hunting, because without dogs in some of the wet areas, you're gonna have a deer population you can't do anything about. And that's one of our biggest, that's sort of the issue with AP Hill with burning all the undergrowth. The deer leave AP Hill in the fall because there's nothing to eat, and they cross Perimeter Road and it looks like Wild Kingdom, and then during the day they're back at AP Hill. So that's just one aspect of the problem. Hunting all along, we're drained by 5 rivers. All of that lowland, deer will hold up without dogs. There's really no hunting them during the day. They come out at night. So when I talk to dog hunters, I mean, that is a crucial component to hunting in at least in Caroline, because of all the wetlands that we do have and the protection we offer a lot of game by doing that. But all of that factors into if you just go to state law, and I don't remember all the particulars at this point, I'm just trying to highlight all the things that the last time we went through all this, where we were. I do believe, and Alan, maybe the minutes from that meeting would help, because I'm not even sure I'm ready to even tell you what I want for an ordinance without going through all that again. Because we went through a lot of washing and drying that ordinance before we went to public hearing. And I don't even remember what was in it then, or what the comments were, but we had we had the room full.
Right.
Yeah.
I think public hearing with two options. Can you go to public hearing, one with just getting rid of the ordinance, and then, option two, like, can you do like a option one, option two for public hearing, one with an elevated stand?
During their
Yeah,
During
you
deer
could
season?
you could do option one, repeal our ordinance.
Or
Go to
option
state.
two?
And then if you repeal it, then you could have option two, which is whatever you want.
No, I mean, option two would be added to our ordinance. Because if you repeal
Then
our
the
ordinance, you're
Add
just
the
going to
rifle
state.
to the.
Well, then you would just
elevated.
do, then the option two would be our ordinance with
Plus,
rifles.
Right, with rifles
And
elevated.
elevated stand.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't be clear if, it appears that when the ordinance was done several years back, they added the ability to hunt coyotes.
Yes.
Right, we did.
Right.
Coyotes,
Which,
wild boar,
Varmint.
and,
It's going on like
and
crazy.
groundhog.
which really needs to be, regardless of what option, we still need to have that ability, because that's going on
Oh, yeah.
year-round now, and I know two people that have killed 41 between the two people.
Right.
And they said they killed, 4 years ago, they killed 3, then it was 12, then it was 20-some, this year it's 40-some.
Coyotes,
Coyotes.
yeah.
And
And that
people are
was,
calling
that was
them-
our
it's-
longest debate on the board, was to whether or not to allow hunting with rifles for
In
coyotes,
Madison?
hogs, and,
Say again?
In Madison?
In Western Carolina, actually, they get calls to go all over the county,
Oh, okay.
but their center of operations in Western Carolina, actually.
Mr. Chair, do we also want to look at adopting the state ordinance and what the, does that give us any different legal look at it? Why did
think
we
that
do our
opens
own
it up
instead of
more,
adopting the state
ordinance.
laws?
You can't, if you repealed our current ordinance completely, you would be under the state regulations. But certainly you can amend our current ordinance any way you want, and there are a number of examples of that.
I just wondered if there was any advantage to just doing to doing the state one, because I wasn't on the board when we did our own hunting
It's my
ordinance.
understanding in state ordinance, you can hunt with a rifle without being elevated. The deer. And whereas, with this, you could say you have to be elevated, if we chose our own. You would have to be elevated. For deer, during deer season, you would have to be elevated. With a rifle.
And you would still hunt deer normally with dogs and a shotgun.
Yes.
Without being elevated.
Right.
And
there are
rifle
so
hunting is
many in
mostly
here,
for-
I couldn't even tell you what the caveats are. I mean, we'd have to let staff draft an ordinance, and we'd have to have a first reading of it and
Yeah.
take a look at it.
Yeah, that's fine. Can you do what state ordinance would be and the differences where if we just dissolved ours, or if we added number 85?
Or 85.
Ms. Black, I can tell you, that, the elevation for the deer hunting is mentioned in 60,
Yeah.
74, 75,
It's, I think a lot of times that's to do with height.
and 84 to 85.
The overlap and
So it's mentioned
nuances.
several times in here.
Yeah. It's either 8 foot or 12, it's either, some of them have 8 foot, some of them have 10 foot.
I just need to see something more comprehensive than just picking numbers out, because there's just so many caveats to everything that's here.
Well, I think Mrs. Hall has already pulled the minutes from the previous discussion, so we'll get those to you. We want to look at 85 versus the state, versus operating under state law, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that sounds like.
And don't we have to make this decision before deer season? Is that what we have
Well,
to do
we've
last
missed
time?
that, we've missed that opportunity
Yeah.
because we're, deer, you
It's
know,
like Thanksgiving.
Deer season starts on.
Deer season
Yeah.
starts next month.
You've
Yeah,
got,
Archery next month.
you've got to make
Maybe
it
in
time to get
guns.
it in the digest.
I mean, not bow, gun. And guns is
Muzzleloading
Thanksgiving.
season will be in October.
Yeah, but then this would be rifles. Yeah, so this would not be muzzle loading. Because you can already do muzzle loading now.
Correct.
My recollection is you have to get it into the state in time for them to publish it in the digest. so
Right.
that- And I can't remember exactly what the time
So
frame
I don't
was,
even
but-
we're
know
out
if
of
we have
that
time
window
this
now.
year,
We
yeah.
don't.
Let's just get it done when we can and get it done right. And
Well, I was
not
gonna
worry
say, that's
about
why
deer
we need to
season.
work at it, get a draft ordinance, do a first reading, take a look at it.
And if it's in May, it's in May. If it's in February, it's in February.
Right.
That's good. Well, that's what we'll do.
Clear as mud, Mr. Parton? Okay, good. Number 16. Mr. Underwood, I know it's a request.
Yeah, 86 8 foot though, I think, as opposed to allows pistol hunt.
I attended a meeting with the Dawn Progressive Center bunch last month. We have another one at the end of this month. This new crew is a little bit different from the older crew, Miss Massey, and when they were trying to do something with the Dawn Progressive Center. And they got a lot of energy now. They've reached out to some large corporations. They've reached out to the USDA. They've got a backer from Bank of America, and they are getting some grants. They're not looking to the county to pay for a brand new facility or to fix the old one there like the last bunch was. But the problem we're having is a few of them left over still feel that there's something they can salvage there. And I told them I condemned it 8 years ago almost now. And then they got to talking about, well, maybe we can save the front of it and parts and pieces of it. And I told them I really didn't think that was feasible. So what they're asking for is up to $2,500 to get a structural evaluation of what is there. And I've talked to an engineer, and it's probably not going to be $2,500, but we set that cap just to bring it forward. And I think it's something that we need for them so they can see that the best thing to do is to demo this place, because in the 8 years since I've condemned it, it's got nothing but worse.
Mr. Chairman, the other part of that is, if there's any part, since it is the historic building for them, I think it was 1952, Kevin?
52, yes, sir.
That was built. If there was any part that could be saved, to work with the Virginia Historic Society, maybe help get money to at least preserve some of the old building. It just says the Dawn School, so they could possibly move forward. But, you know, Kevin and I have looked at it for a number of years now. It's in bad shape. So they need to really understand what is there and what is not there. But perhaps there is a piece of history that can be saved, which will enable them to reach out to other folks to get some grants. So,
and to be honest, 8 years ago, the assembly area where we used to vote was salvageable at that time.
At the time, right. It's not anymore.
And I told them at the meeting, they would spend more trying to salvage that place than demoing and building a new one. And I told them they don't necessarily need that footprint, because the whole right side, the construction back in the time is all that frosted glass, and all the lintels had deteriorated. There's nothing to save.
The gypsum board is all wet, so it's just.
But the diehards there, they need to see that, and so that's why we're employing the services of a structural engineer.
But Kevin, theoretically.
Yes, sir.
The front facade is brick and mortar, right?
The right side. Well, as you're facing the building, the left side is brick and mortar.
Yeah, the old, where it says Dawn School, that's brick.
So you
that's
could,
center block.
I mean, you could theoretically save that piece of the brick facade and build right behind it.
Well, not necessarily, Floyd. The footers and foundation have failed.
Oh.
I have structural cracks where the lintels have failed and they're not carrying the point loads, and it's gone right down. To the right side, there's a brick veneer that goes up to those windows of the assembly area, And then there's some different type construction, but,
Yeah.
but yeah, she's bad.
All right.
I think it's worth for peace of mind for everybody to at least take a look at looking at the structure, because you're never gonna convince somebody unless they see it in black and white. We've got $2,500. I'll make a motion, Mr. Underwood. You had something.
No, I just, if it's been condemned for 8 years, it's not a county building either, but I mean, I don't know.
I know we
Let me say, I'm asking, and I feel the same way, Mr. Black. I know Kevin and I have gone around and around, about this building, and I just ask that the board would indulge me this time and allow me to make the motion and support it, this time. I know it's out of the ordinary, but, again, that's for peace of mind, and let them know that we are trying to support the new group and the new effort to put a community center there. We can show them that what they have now is just not feasible to move.
I would also add, I think it's important, we use that building extensively. In my early years here, we had a sheriff's office substation, we had a library, we voted there. But we're a stakeholder there. It's fallen in disarray here these past years. But I think this new group, Heather Dyson and the bunch, a younger bunch, Irie is the boy from Bank of America, and they want to do this on their own. They're actually fundraising, and they're not coming to the county for big dollars, and it's kind of a point of pride for them down there.
Well, wasn't this actually used as a school? Wasn't this used as a school after 69?
Well, I don't.
I think it was, yes.
Well,
Well, Mrs. Rollins is saying yes, and it was a school, so I think that school was part of this school building, and they gave it to the county for $1. So we didn't pay anything when we were stakeholders there to use it, so.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a small return.
And some of the uses that they're doing, they want to do adult daycare as well as child daycare, and as an assembly for group events down there. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to.
Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to authorize staff to expend up to $2,500 for an engineering study to determine structural integrity of the Dawn Progressive Center, formerly the Dawn School.
Mr. Thomas beat me, second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thanks for staying up.
And we have talked about agenda item number 17 for some time, and we were just waiting to come back, I guess, to this. We'd actually talked about getting a real estate company to do this some time ago. You still want to do that, Mr.
Absolutely.
Mr. Underwood, why don't you just go ahead and make a motion? 'Cause
And I'll second.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I make a motion that, selection of a method to make former Frog Level Fire Rescue Squad property available for sale to the public.
Is that all we need, Mr. Pardon? Because we're gonna, real estate agent.
Real estate agent.
You determine the method.
By a proposal, by a.
No,
real
to
estate
actually
company?
assess a value and then put it up for sale.
Right, we're gonna get an
But how do you
appraisal,
select the
or
real
we're just
estate
gonna have an agent do a comparative market analysis, or?
Mr. Pardon?
An agent would do a fair market analysis.
Have to go through a procurement process to select the agent.
Right.
And then the agent would help us set the value, the asking price.
I mean, you'll have 1,000 volunteers to list it, that's why I'm just kinda curious what the process would be to procure an agent.
An RFP, I assume.
I wouldn't know.
That'll be an interesting RFP.
No
I
doubt.
guess it's gonna come down to commission on the sale.
Probably. That'll be a factor. Without a doubt.
All right, we know the methodology. Mr. Underwood's made a motion. Mrs. Long has seconded the motion. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
Move we skip number 18.
18, okay, now here is the real challenge, because we have made great progress in the meeting tonight.
Move we skip number 18.
We didn't skip it, we're there. Mr. Shebel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Agenda item 18 tonight is discussion of proposed water and sewer rates for Caroline County. Mr. Rogers with Davenport presented a utility system rate update that led to a follow-up study and a board work session. One of the questions that we hear is, why are we raising the rates? Well, the 31st Annual Virginia Water and Wastewater Rate Report for 2019 showed that over the last 10 years, water rates in the Commonwealth have increased by approximately 3.95% per year. Caroline County is at 1.5%. Wastewater rates have increased by approximately 4.4% per year. Caroline County is at 1%. Caroline County water and sewer combined is 1.1% over the last 10 years. Note, Caroline County has not had a rate increase in 6 years for sewer and 8 years for water.
So,
Mr. Rogers' report showed that in the last 5 years, the operating expenditures have grown by nearly 25% or 5% each year over the last 5 years. At the same time, our revenues have not increased at all. In other words, the cost of doing business has increased 5% each year, but the revenues have been remained flat over the last 5. Mr. Rogers further explained that the utility department's days of cash on hand, which is currently 0, while ideally we should have a minimum of 365 days of cash on hand, he stated a reasonable target for Caroline County should be 90 days cash on hand. With the proposed rates, we could build this over the next 5 years. The new rates will help Caroline County as we develop a debt management policy by establishing a debt service coverage floor for the utility system that is consistent with its existing rate covenants. Over time, Davenport recommends that the county build its debt service coverage above those thresholds. The Dawn wastewater system's operating revenues have fallen short over the operational expenditures for the last 5 years. During the board work session, many alternative case studies were presented to the board, ranging between 4.5% and 9% rate increases to meet our utility goals. It's important to note that even the higher end of 9%, the utilities in Caroline County will still depend on the general fund to help pay its debt service. Based on the input from the board work session, staff is recommending in 1 year, January 1 or July 1, a change to the capital asset fee and a 5% user fee. In addition, years 2 through 5, a 5% increase in user fees as outlined in my memo. Therefore, staff is looking to the board for direction of how they would like us to move forward with the rate increase and to approve us to advertise for a public hearing. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions the board may have.
We spent a lot of time on this in the work session. Mr. Rogers gave us, we are going to be in a point where we're going to have to borrow money for the utility system, and we're not going to be able to based on rates. The town of Bowling Green's in the same dilemma right now, and they've had to raise their rates to be eligible. So if we do this slowly, if we do this over time, it's going to be a whole lot better than when we get caught short and are forced to raise them.
There was another document that is not included in this updated packet, and I don't know where it is right now, but that was a document that compared our rates with surrounding counties.
Yes, that was in the Davenport packet, in your board packet as well.
Right.
Yes, sir.
In that document, we are number 2 or 3 already, which made us, at the top of the most expensive water and sewer rates.
Which is by your surrounding counties.
Right.
So if you compare us to surrounding counties, when you look at the number of customers we have compared to our surrounding counties, it's not a fair comparison.
Well, with King George, it's almost fair.
King George pays $100 a month in debt service payments on top of their water and sewer bill. It's additional to their bill.
So each year, Draper Aiden Associates is one of our engineers. They put out this annual water and wastewater rate report.
Right.
And it goes through and compares, there's 128 replies in the Commonwealth for water and 119 for wastewater. And it goes through the different amounts of gallons and by sizes so that you can kind of compare where we fall in the line when it comes to the number of customers. So if I go down through here and let's take Caroline County, for instance.
What page are you on,
What page
Mr.
are you on?
Sheville?
This is, do you have the Draper Aiden report?
Yes, it's in our packet.
All right, page 7.
Detailed projections.
I think you're in the Davenport report.
Okay.
But just to show you what this is, it's basically it shows Caroline County has 1,652 customers.
This isn't the right rate.
Yeah, we have the Davenport.
Yeah, you got the Davenport. This is the other rate.
No, this is, I've got, yeah, that's not.
Yeah, I don't think you've got that one in your packet. Yeah, so we've got 1,652 customers for water. If you compare us to our neighbors north or south of us, when I look here at Hanover County, Hanover County's got 19,815. And if I go to Spotsylvania County, just north of us, hopefully they have put this in when they did that. Spotsylvania County has 29,741. And then we'll look at King George as well, just so we've got a number for them. King George County Service Authority has 3,996 water
Does it
customers.
talk about the amount that they pay in debt service per customer? Because that's on their bill every month.
Do you have rates?
Yes, it does have rates, yes,
That
sir.
is rate?
Uh-huh.
And we're like second or third?
In those group, yes. But if you actually reduce down between the 1,500 and 3,000, we're right in the medium with everyone else. Because our cost is more per person because we still have to maintain a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility. Yeah, we're just a smaller system, so the cost per capita is just more, and it's just where we are as a young utility.
Now, we've gone through this discussion before, and part of the discussion we had before was the amount of contribution of the water system to the county funds.
Yes, sir.
So, are we gonna say, one, maybe that instead of the residential rates increasing so fast, maybe the business rates could increase faster than the residential rates?
What is the percent of your residential compared to your, what percent of your income? Or usage is
So
residential
if you look
compared
at the
to
county, if you look at our residential income for water, it's 553,000 comes in compared to commercial, it's 400,000.
Is that annual or monthly?
That's an annual fee.
What about wastewater?
There's a whole slew. It all depends because there's different tiers. We've got 4 different tiers as well as 4 different categories. So if you use between 0 and 500,000 gallons, you'd be called Commercial 1. If you use between 500,000 and 2 million.
Yeah, see, we need a little bit more data. I don't have a problem looking at it, but we do need more data if we're gonna say, hey, we need to do this.
What are we talking about?
If you could just give me a usage for residential versus our business, that would be sufficient for me.
But you're only talking about $1 per customer per month.
All right, wait a minute, Mr.
So to get the,
Let me,
and that varies based on a meter size. I mean,
Right,
it's,
I understand,
you've
but
got
just-
customers out there that use 1 million gallons a month compared to a resident that
I
uses
understand.
5,000.
I understand.
So
but
if
it's
you're
still
looking
usage.
at percentage-wise, our commercial
All
customers
right,
based
give me the
on.
number of gallons used for businesses versus residential. And you can lump 1 through 4 into one category and just give me the number of gallons used on average for residential versus all commercial?
I would say that we're probably at a 60-40, 60% residential, 40% commercial on our usage. If you actually look at our customer base, for commercial customers in the county system, we've got 125 commercial customers compared to 1,395 residential customers.
You're saying 60-40. I find that hard
Usage,
to believe.
because you've got like Flying J that uses a tremendous amount of water. Caroline High School is a commercial customer, uses a tremendous amount of water.
Oh, that's right. Do we charge Caroline High School?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got 5 truck stops. Yeah. One on every corner.
So you got 90% are residential customers, and you got 10% are commercial customers.
Before that.
So you got 40% of your revenues coming from 10% of your customers now.
Who's the 10%? The
Commercial.
the big commercial?
And that's commercial in general.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to eat the whole, I don't want to eat the whole pie at one time.
But this is the Milford system too.
Mr. Shebel,
Yes, sir.
on this, page 5, your residential combined bill. All right, so it's gonna go up, so if I use.
Are
like-
you in the memo, sir?
I'm in the proposed rates.
The Draper
With the chart, I'm in the.
It's in the board
Board
packet. Page 3, 2 and 3.
Page 5, actually, I'm on.
You're on 5, okay.
Okay.
The effective rate?
Yeah, so like, for example, that would be like something like Ladysmith Village or Pendleton.
Yes, sir.
So what you're saying right now, if they use 5,000 gallons, which I would imagine most families are using right around 5,000, so their rates are gonna go from today, basically 93, 91 to in 4 years, 3 years, they're going up $27?
Yeah, if you have 5,000 gallons, yes, sir. In the first year, the board had recommended bumping our capital asset fee up higher than the 5% for the first year, and then it would continue at 5. So that includes the additional bump that the board had discussed. So it would go from, for 5,000 gallon customer, $93.91 to $98.53.
I mean, just out of curiosity, I mean, how does that compare to my friends at Aqua Virginia?
Oh, about $60, $60 to $70 cheaper.
If I'm using 5,000 gallons at Aqua, I'm about
No,
180.
per month.
Water
About
and sewer?
Between $60 and $70 cheaper, not including the whisk.
And I saw on the other things too, I mean, just out of curiosity, what is just to remind me, it was in the packet, what is the 90-day cash on hand? What do you need for that?
The 90-day cash on hand is to kind of pay as you go.
No, I
instead of-
understand that, but
okay.
what is the total number? What's the amount of money
The amount of money,
for 90 days cash on hand?
that would be 500,000. 500,000. Which is just a goal to try to reach in 5 years. We're still,
Like it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Why, and it's just coming to us. When did we have the work session? February?
yes, sir.
So, because of the virus?
That was the year before, yes. COVID was part of the issue, trying to get a public hearing. We've been trying to pull that.
I think this would require going to public hearing, Mr. Shebel.
Correct. What I'd like to do is if the board would authorize us to go to public hearing, then you can have your hearing, and then you can discuss if you can't raise them any higher than this, but you can always lower them if you wanted to, or select what was there, and at least it gives you a good starting point.
Can I put this together with the wastewater treatment thing in a work session together, and we discuss all of this?
We had a work session in February on this. I think the wastewater treatment thing that we were talking about might need to be a work session in itself, but we did have a work session on this back in February. And that's why I think this came out of the work session.
That was the February year before, so it wasn't this year.
Yeah, I mean, so it's been a while.
Yeah, but the data that we have, you can't compare Spotsylvania and us. I mean,
You can look at
we're
it.
high already.
You can look at theirs, it's
We
just
are.
hard to actually compare us dollar for dollar for the rate.
Excuse me?
If you've got 30,000 people paying into a system and we've got 1,600, you know, we've got to provide the same level of treatment. While our plants are smaller, we still have a number of employees.
And see, that's the other part of it, is I'm gonna impact those 1,600 people to pay for a water system that benefits everybody in the county because of all the business that are on there.
Mr. Thomas, this is a circular argument. We can do this. We can talk about this all day long.
Well,
but
no,
who's
the reality is, if
paying-
we talk about a penny on the tax rate, that would help him. And that's everybody paying for something that everybody
But
gets benefit from.
They're the ones, the people who are using the system should be paying into it most.
And they're benefiting from the system. But everybody in the county is benefiting from the system, from the business revenue that comes from Carmel Church. That's what we discussed before. Mr. Shebel has given us reports before. Mr. Shebel, do you remember the numbers, like $400 a house?
And you can also talk about the constituents that are on Aqua Virginia are subsidizing the county system, and in addition,
No, they're
paying
not.
100.
No,
Yes,
they're
they
not.
are. Yes, they are.
They are not, and we
yes,
are
they
constantly
They are
constantly
subsidizing the
paying
system.
legal fees to help you with Aqua. Aqua's not giving the county anything. Nothing.
They're taken away.
That's not giving. See,
Yeah.
giving is adding. Taking away is subtracting.
$373.38 based on 2018 tax rate.
Every
Per-
household. Every
Yes, sir.
household gets that discount
If
on their real estate tax
if
because
their
of the
house,
Carmel Church water
based
system,
on an average household of $189,000.
which is not the case in your district, for example. So you get more of a benefit from that. You get that much of a benefit, but we're gonna tax those 1,600 customers to help pay for everybody else?
So right now, if you look at the businesses that are attached to the county's utility system, if we didn't have the utility system, those businesses wouldn't be here. $5,083,000 you would not have in revenue. Right now, you transfer about $2.2 million to help offset the debt service of the new wastewater treatment plant.
That doesn't include the improvements that we're gonna have to do in the very near future, which
No,
is
sir, it does not.
in excess of 17 million.
So we're just trying to
But
keep
that
up with.
wastewater, excuse me, go ahead, Joe, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, we're trying to keep up with the operational cost to make sure we're maintaining operations. We know that we can't put the debt service on the new wastewater treatment plant on the existing customers. The plant that was there was suiting them fine. We had to expand to be able to take additional growth and economic development opportunities.
So it's the same principle when we spent $6 million on Ladysmith Road. It's not gonna immediately generate, so we're spending the money for infrastructure.
The bottom
Wait
line
a minute,
is-
let me finish, Mr. Black. And here, the same way, we spent the money on infrastructure in the hope to draw more business.
And we're
that
actually
hasn't-
doing it.
Right, and we're doing some of that now, and we're trying to generate additional revenue. So it's pretty much the same way, and we agreed to expand 639 for business to come to that
I don't think there's any,
area.
there's no argument that the utility system, there's no argument that the utility system is valuable. We're not saying that. What he's saying is, and we're trying to turn it into an argument that's not there. What he's saying is there has been no increase in the utilities in how many years, Mr. Shebel?
6 years and 8 years.
6 years, and he's desperate. I don't think he's arguing about the importance. We're not here arguing, but that we're saying that there has not been a fee increase in 6 years. And so, as a result, he's gonna have to take more out of the general fund in order to do that.
Right, that's not.
And so therefore, what we're looking at here is the fees. We're looking at fees. We're not arguing whether the utility system is worth it. I think we can all agree it is. But we're looking at the fees that the people that are on the utility system, the businesses that are in the utility system are gonna have to pay. And there's been no increase in 6 years. We don't do
But
taxes
everybody
every 6
benefits-
years.
But everybody benefits from it.
Everyone benefits from a lot of stuff in the county. Everyone benefits from our school system too. But I mean, the
Everybody
bottom.
pays taxes into our school system.
Yep.
Everybody
is
benefits, but you're saying you wanna tax 1,600 people.
We need to have the general fund pay the
So why don't you
system
just give it
back.
to them for free then? Just like why don't you just give it to them for free then? Why do we even have fees on utilities then? If we're never gonna increase them, why would we even have a utility fee? I mean, if I'm using that argument, seriously, if I'm using that argument, and we're never gonna increase the fees, why do we have them? Why don't we just have the whole general fund pay for our utilities?
Well, we have done that to some degree because we've given a lot of businesses and a lot of people sewer connection fees, water connection fees for nothing. What the reality is we have a system that's providing, as he just said, $5 million to the county, the entire county. So those few people, and this is something that you'll have to look at again, but those few people are providing a benefit for everybody in the county, and now we want to tax those people more to provide more of a benefit to the county.
But wait a minute, the town of Bowling Green has its own water system.
I don't have anything
Now,
to do with
wait,
the town of Bowling
now, what
Green.
if you're gonna use that logic?
They're-
The town of Bowling Green has its own water system
The town of
and
Bowling Green has
contributes,
they have their own
and they
government.
pay their own.
They have their own government. I don't
It
have anything
doesn't
to do with that.
matter, it's still paying, they as residents have to pay the debt service on the utilities,
On
on the county utility debt.
And they get $400 of
But
benefit from
but
every
they're
house.
still paying, they can't
And
pay
they get a
both
benefit.
places.
And I don't have anything to do with their water system.
Mr. Black, do you wanna make a motion?
I will make the motion that we go to public hearing with this, the utility rates as advertised by Mr. Shebel.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I think we've had enough discussion.
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, you just can't cut off the discussion.
No, this is getting circular now. We're gonna go to
No,
public
it's-
hearing.
It's not circular. He's giving you an analogy that's valid. We invested $6 million in Ladysmith Road, and we invested $16 million of the state money for something that nothing's there. Nothing's there at all.
It's an investment.
We have a system, what?
It's an investment, just like we're gonna talk about possibly investing $17
It's an
million.
investment. So we've got an investment that actually works.
The utility system, we're talking about $17 million in the utility system, that's an investment.
We've
That is
got an investment that works
got an investment
now.
that's working.
And now you want to tax those people.
So why do we even charge utility fees
No,
then?
I'm just saying.
Why do we even charge
The
utility
reality
fees?
is everybody benefits.
Mr. Shebel here is the guy who's in charge, he's the person in charge of our utility. He's come to us and said there has not been an increase in 5 years. There has not been an increase in the rates in 5 years, 6 years.
So
he's saying to us
okay,
what he's
when
saying
did we
to us,
raise
and-
taxes? Have we raised taxes in
Yes,
5 years?
we have.
When?
We raised taxes when I was chair. So that was 3 years ago.
1 cent?
2 cents.
And we didn't raise them, we haven't raised them.
1 cent.
1 cent,
1
and that
cent.
kind of balanced out us getting screwed the year before by having the late assessment.
Right.
So
We just, so
we've
basically,
been
since
flatlined
you've been on the board for 8 years, we haven't really raised taxes.
We raised the taxes
Since
for.
you've been on the board for 8 years, we haven't really raised
We
taxes.
raised the taxes for the schools.
One time.
And the radio system. That wasn't just a referendum. The radio system was not part of the referendum.
It was not, that is true.
Gentlemen.
But we rolled
The
it
radio
into the
system was
referendum.
not part of the referendum.
Come on, wait a minute.
No, I mean,
This is-
we
this
were in
is-
good shape right there. You said we ought to give it to free.
Mr.
Everybody
Chairman,
has
point of order.
Well, what's his point of order?
The topic is
What's his point of
water
order?
rates.
What's his point of order?
The point of order is we're off topic. We're way off topic.
That's not a valid point of order,
It-
but I'm
it
gonna
is-
let it go. Not
it's
really.
off topic.
Not really. We were
And I've
having
got a
dis-
motion on the table, and
And
I've got a second.
And we're having discussion on the
And
motion.
and we've had a ton of discussion. If somebody wants to call for the question,
We
they
haven't,
can.
he just said, and this is discussion on germane to the motion to not have a public hearing. We haven't raised taxes in 5 years. This is something, and I'm not a raised taxes person, but this is something that benefits everybody. Why isn't a penny of our tax rate going to this system?
More
That
than a
would be
penny is.
That would be $250,000 a year.
We're spending $2.2 million in debt service for utilities.
That's debt service, and we can all say why we're in that debt service issue, because we gave breaks to a lot of people.
Well, we didn't give 2.2 million. That's what we spent.
We did. We
It's-
did.
And if you look at our history, going back to 2000, we hadn't had a rate increase. In 2001, we did a 4% increase, didn't have rates increased for 4 years prior to that. In 2001, we went all the way to 2006 and didn't have a single rate increase. And we did an 18% increase at one time.
Yep.
We didn't do an increase for the next 4 years. We went up 157% 5 years later. Now we're at 10 years and we've only gone up 1%. So history shows us that eventually we're going to have to raise our rates, And I believe during the last public comment during a rate increase, when we had that large amount, and I think, Mr. Thomas, you're probably the only one who was still here then, the ratepayers that were here then said, don't raise it so much. I'd rather you raise it slowly instead of all at one time. So just, you know, as we look at the history of where we've been.
I've heard that exact same feedback regarding the property tax, the real estate tax. You don't do it nothing, then hit me with 5 cents. I'd rather you go 1 cent, 1 cent, 1 cent than go 0, 0, 0, then 3.
And statistically, we're at 4.2% increase in the cost to operate the utility system, but with no increase. So we're losing money. We're now at 25% lost revenue from where we were 5 years ago, according to Mr. Rogers.
So what is the motion to go to public hearing say?
Proposed rates.
Actually, to discuss the rates that have been given to us on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Which are continually increasing rates for the
Correct.
next 5 years,
Next
not the
bringing it up.
$1 rate that you talked about right away.
No, it's slowly bringing it up. And it depends on what you are, because if you're on water only, it could be only $1.
So we're gonna not have any discussion the next time Aqua comes and says their rates are gonna go up.
I'm not saying that we're not gonna have a discussion. Aqua, if you're on the Aqua system, you are paying, Mr. Schiebel said, $60 a month more on water and sewer. So then if you do the math times that, that's $720 a year more. For some people, that's their tax bill for the whole entire year.
We've spent $300,000 fighting Aqua, at least.
Yep.
300?
Yeah.
It's 50,000 to 75,000 a time, so there's been 3 times. So you
And
do the math.
three times since you've been here.
Well,
Yeah, it's more than that. It's at least $300,000. So we're gonna fight somebody and spend $300,000
yeah, when they're gouging someone
fighting
about over
somebody.
$60 a month, yes. 700 and, yes.
I don't
When they're
have
gouging
a
someone.
problem. I supported you fighting
Yeah.
them. I really supported you trying to take them over, but you wouldn't do that.
This is, come on now, it's been 5 years. Do you think Aqua waits 5 years to increase their rates? So no, they don't. So look.
We don't get any money from Aqua.
We need to, it's been a while, and I'm not saying, like, we're still gonna have to subsidize the system.
We get no benefit
The
from
people
Aqua.
here that you're talking about are not gonna be paying for the whole system. It's asking them, what Mr. Schiebel is asking, this is why we're going to public hearing, he's asking them to pay a little bit more. I think Mr. Forehand has said, look, they'd rather go up a little bit, that's what this does.
Well, let's raise the rates in his area. You don't have any folks there.
I'm the only one on this public system.
No.
You're on that? You're on this?
No, he lives on the system.
Go next.
But, I mean,
You live
at
in
the end of the day, the public
No, he
water
said-
and the
he's
public
talking about
sewer are
living
taking the place of a well and septic system, okay? I know people that have dumped $20,000 in their septic system that would gladly pay whatever if public sewer were available to them. Just because they don't have the expense of yearly maintenance of the pumping of the tank every 5 years. The alternative septic systems cost a fortune. The wells that are going dry from time to time. I don't know. It's
every year.
This is a convenience for those people. It also allows denser. The Ladysmith Village, for example, could not have been built if it required a traditional septic system.
What's the water and sewer hookup, Joey?
5,000
I
for
mean,
water, 6,000 for
it
sewer.
allows some of the growth. Yes,
Right, we did reduce
it allows growth, but it also allows a denser population, which is what we're seeing in Belmont and Ladysmith Village and a couple other places.
The only thing that I say is, I agree we should have some increase for those folks, but for them to bear we're almost punishing those folks for helping us to build a state-of-the-art system.
Right.
So we're punishing them now for being on the system.
And they've been, the
And
system's
they're
been
the
there
ones who-
for 30 years.
Right, but
But pipe doesn't last forever, and
yeah,
and
I
the
agree.
efforts
That's
that
what
we
I
do
agree
there.
with.
We all
I
agree there
with
should be a
the premise.
maintenance fund. We all agree
You know,
with that.
we wouldn't have, we have to have business, we have to have the foresight to see businesses and have infrastructure, just like we're doing on 639. I had some pushback mentally about it, but then I got over that because we're looking to build for the future. The same way here, we did the same thing. The majority of the funds that came to 639. It wasn't just for 639, it was for the whole county. But we decided to designate it there because we're hoping to get a big bang for our buck at the end. So it's just a matter of, are we gonna be prepared? And I understand, Mr. Sheba, what you're saying about us going negative in order to operate the fund. Well, we had 10 new businesses, we'd be in good shape, probably.
Be in real good shape.
Right. And they're coming, they're just not coming as fast.
We just
We
approved one
didn't
today.
predict COVID. We didn't predict, the housing market fall, 10 years ago. But it happened and we went through it. And we wouldn't have this conversation if we were growing at a faster rate. But on the other hand, I do think, to maintain a system, people know they've got to pay maybe a little bit more here or there. But I don't think they should just bear the brunt of the cost.
Mr. Chair, if I can have the floor for a moment.
Mrs. Long?
I, for one, have not had a utility bill that has not gone up some over the past 5 years. Chemicals for the wells and the treatments, the pipelines, the maintenance has gone up at least that much. I think people aren't going to be upset about a reasonable rate increase. As far as it being a burden the people in that side of the county are bearing, they didn't have to dig a well. They didn't have to put in a sewer system. Everybody in my district has to pay for that. If their well runs dry, they have to take it out of their pocket to redig it. They call, on that side, they call Mr. Shebel and say, I don't have any water. I pay taxes on my house just like Mr. Forehand pays taxes on his house. It's not just those who are on the system being punished for having a system. They knew they had to hook up to a system when they built their houses. So they should understand, they're logical people, that prices go up. My electric bill's higher than it was 5 or 10 years ago, my cable bill, it's life. Nobody likes it, but let's not drag it out because we don't want to be the ones to raise the rates and then we have to make a huge jump on them because it's easier for families to budget gradually. So just a different viewpoint on it.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing, and then you can call the question, just to make sure I can give Mrs. Long the full scope of the system. The system includes Milford now.
Correct.
The Caroline system includes Milford, which was a system, that's this one right out here, which was a system for low to moderate income people. That was a separate system, separate rate structure, but now they're part of this system. Those people, it's not just that side of the county, those people will be adversely affected by any rate increase. A low to moderate income system was installed just for them. So I just wanted to make you aware, it's not just the more affluent side of the county
like
or
the town
Belmont.
of Port Royal
No,
who
I'm
got a
still
grant.
being recognized,
I'm
right?
sorry.
So it's not just one side of the county, it's in particular people who are hard pressed to be able to take care. And that's all I have to say on the subject, period.
There's people all over the county that are hard pressed to take care. It's not just in one section.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of going to public hearing with the proposed rates from November 2020, which covers a 5-year rate increase for people on the utility system. Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Roll call vote. Mr. Forehand?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Nay.
Mrs. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Nay.
And I vote aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. With just informational items, Mr. Cully, you going to go through those?
we included, and I'm not planning on going through it, you can review it, the status of capital projects and where we are on some of those. We did receive a letter from the, on the Caroline Monument from the chairman and the board of the Green Lawn Cemetery. We included, along with a letter from Caroline Historical Society, to bring to your attention. So those are in your packet. There's no action required at this time. We tentatively, I don't see anything major on September. Most like all of our calendars of all of the various events are canceled. We do have penciled in the October 6th Tuesday, or maybe the 8th Thursday if we hear back from the school board, but we'll set that at the 22nd meeting of the board. So not a whole lot to report in any of those, just those two letters mainly.
Mr. Cully, quick question before you go. The advertisement for the statue was more than 15 days. I think it's October 5th or whatever.
We couldn't get it done.
I mean, more than 30 days?
Yeah, we couldn't get it back to you until the October meeting. So we was trying to get it, proposals back to us so we could have it on the October regular meeting.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't make the September one, so we just let it stay out there long enough to get stuff back.
Okay, I just wanted to see why it was 30 days according to Mr. Emerson. And then there's an announcement on the bulletin board back here that says October, which is more than 30 days.
Right, but it just went out. Right, we couldn't get it produced in time to have it back in the office to get it on the agenda for the 22nd of September. So we just set it up to be back to us to be on the October, no, 6th was, no, it was 13th. It's mid, second week of October. So that's all.
Closing board comments, Mr. Forehand?
None.
Mr. Black?
Mr. Collier or Mr. Parton, could we put Mr. Schiebel on the agenda for one of our upcoming board on the trash update? We haven't had one. I mean, I appreciate what he's doing with the... Yeah, no, I know. I'm talking about like with the person. No, he sent the trash update out, but I'm talking about with the person he was going to hire and some of his plans. Not the trash update like that, like as far as his plans. Yes. Educational, yes. So it wasn't for like just the poundage. I'm talking about like he was gonna, we put in the budget for someone and he had solved that. So just that kind of what the programs are doing, he's doing. That's what I'm looking for.
Mr. Underwood? No comment. Mrs. Long?
I'll just throw out there the last comment. The town of Port Royal just had a rate increase on their water system.
Their
Mr.
LMI?
Thomas?
LMI?
I didn't have a comment, but since she mentioned that, the county should have purchased the Port Royal system when the opportunity came, but we missed the great opportunity.
And I've got none. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.